I'm grateful for such a cooperative audience tonight. It's fantastic. Don't even have to gavel or anything. We're ready to go. The City of Southport Board of Aldermen meeting, May 11th, 2023, is now called to order. Thank you for being here. Welcome to all those in attendance, and welcome to those watching virtually. For our invocation tonight, I'm happy to have Pastor Gene Tomlinson with us. He's with the Point Church. He's a Southport native. His father, former mayor of Southport. And I thought of Pastor Tomlinson, and I was thinking, who should we get for this month of May? And I thought of Mother's Day, and I thought of graduates. And so I thought of him, and he can tell you he has 2 graduates this May. And so I'm happy to have him. So Pastor Gene, if you'll come up and lead our invocation, and this will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Oh, thank you. I'm very honored to be able to be here. I, like Doc said, grew up here. My youngest daughter is 17 years old. I started a little bit late in life, and I'll be cutting a trail pretty quickly after our parade because the South Brunswick Senior Parade will be going by here quite shortly. And got another daughter I saw on the thing looking at National Nurses Week, and my oldest daughter just graduated on Monday night from nursing school. And so we've got a whole lot. My wife is from New Zealand. Her mother just joined us 2 weeks ago and will be here until the middle of July. So it's going to be very nice to have a mother here with us. And for all of you out here that are mothers, God bless you. You know, I miss mine tremendously. And for those of you who are missing your moms, hopefully, I'm a whosoever. So I believe that one of these days I'm going to see my mom again. And everybody in this room's a whosoever. We may be different in religion, belief, whatever like that, but, you know, God created us all in His image, and in His eyes, we're all whosoevers. So you may want to look at somebody when you're thinking about disagree with them and saying, I love you, whosoever. And just kind of lighten things up a little bit. But we appreciate the mayor and the aldermen and what everybody doing, the chief of police, Charles, Randy, people that I knew, their families all through my life. We just appreciate Southport. It's a bit different, but, you know, so be it. You know, we just trust everybody to keep making sound decisions and reaching the good solutions for the betterment of everybody in town. So, Father God, we thank you so much that you are the God of love. And Lord, you love each and every one of us. You love Southport. We hope and pray that when that day comes, there's going to be a little place in heaven that reminds us of Southport. And we can all just sit down on the riverfront and wiggle our toes in Cape Fear River mud. But Lord, as this meeting goes forward tonight, we pray for your peace. We pray for your wisdom, consideration for all the members with each other, with all the people in the audience expressing their views and desires for the town. And Lord, we just pray that you continue to watch over, guide, protect, and bless this wonderful little place that all of us whosoevers call home here on earth. So Lord, again, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, and it's in his name that we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Gene, and congratulations on the graduates and having your wife's mother here. It's going to be a wonderful weekend for y'all. So thank you. Before we go to item D, public comments, I just have a few introductory remarks. The city manager and city staff, the Board of Aldermen are making great progress on the city budget. A budget presentation is the first item on the agenda. The budget is for the present, city government services, and also the future, a planner for historic district downtown area, and adding a paramedic program. We proclaim our police, nurses, our military, hurricane preparedness this month, and we remember and appreciate teachers. On the agenda, we have debris removal, selection of an audit firm, off-duty management for police, fire, and EMS departments. We have plat approval requests, preliminary and final for Oakton, Prices Creek, and Osprey Landing. Our city attorney, Brady Herman, will be presenting a social media policy. There's an ordinance amendment for boards, committees, and commissions. There's a system development fee, utility rate study, engineer selection. The ad hoc committee on the cemetery, city staff Randy Jones and Elena Dale are in the process of scheduling a meeting, accepting applications, and conducting interviews. And good news from the NC League of Municipalities. Senate Bill 317 and House Bill 562 addressing the workforce housing crisis, which would also remove local municipal authority for zoning and planning, did not advance before the May 4th crossover deadline. I want to thank our board for their early resolution and work against this bill and other bills, and I want to thank our citizens for their voice in opposition to these bills. We need to be vigilant against bills such as HB 409 concerning accessory dwelling units. This would, and I quote, would preempt local zoning in every community statewide by allowing a second residence to be built on a lot zoned for single-family homes with very few restrictions, end of quote. This has already passed the House, so contact the senators and let them know of your opposition. Senate Bill 675 land use changes and clarifications would eliminate extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ, in the state. So there's still work to be done. So I thank you for that as we continue on in our journey. Item D, public comment. Madam Clerk.
Marjorie Jones.
Welcome, Ms. Jones, and make sure the microphone is on.
Thank you. It's on. Marjorie Jones, 136 Stewart Avenue. Concerning the Oakton development and the access on the Stewart Avenue. I am not against Oakton. I would just like for them to be a good neighbor to me, to the residents of Stewart Avenue, and to the citizens of Southport. The planned access on the Stewart Avenue directly across from my property and my driveway is unnecessary, as there are 4 other accesses, 2 on Fodale and 2 going through the hammocks to Moore Street and to Stewart Avenue. I request that this unnecessary access that would destroy a 1/4 acre of trees and woodlands be eliminated. Cutting these trees for no reason would be an insult to the citizens of Southport who value trees. We are rapidly losing our trees and are desperate to save them wherever we can. This petition is signed by more than 100 citizens who are outraged by the possible cutting of these trees. It is important to preserve and protect this area. This is a watershed that prevents stormwater runoff. Stewart Avenue already has a flooding problem that will be made worse by the clear cutting to build houses in Oakton. I fear that this access will pour water onto my property. A watershed provides shade, filters pollutants, lowers summer temperatures, removes carbon from the air, and supports wildlife. On April 28th, we enjoyed an inspiring celebration of Arbor Day in Taylorfield Park. The proclamation for Arbor Day and that celebration was presented to Scott Lynn by Mayor Hayden at the previous Alderman meeting. These are some of the words of Mayor Hayden from the proclamation. I quote, "Trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. Trees in our city increase property values and beautify our community. Trees in our city are a great source of joy and spiritual renewal. I and the Board of Aldermen proclaim April 28th as Arbor Day in the city and urge all citizens to celebrate and support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations." Unquote. Are these just empty words, or are they words of integrity that we take seriously? Unnecessarily destroying this beautiful wooded area would clearly be a loss for Southport, but it would also be a loss for Oakton. Cutting trees, clearing land, putting down asphalt for a street and concrete for sidewalks would be an additional cost. It would cause a loss of security. This access would create a through street in Oakton. A through street would invite traffic other than residential, and it would make crime in the neighborhood more likely. Preserving this native habitat would be an asset for Oakton. Potential buyers would be more attracted to a neighborhood wooded walking trail than to a through street. I have given several reasons why the elimination of this access would be better for the residents of Stewart Avenue, the city of Southport, and for Oakton. I have yet to hear one reason this access is necessary. I hope Oakton will be a good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Madam Clerk.
Karen Rife.
Welcome, Ms. Wright.
Good evening. My name is Karen R. Rife, 5980 Dutchman Creek Road in Southport. And I'm here, Mr. Mayor, Madam City Manager, and Board of Aldermen to say thank you. Thank you for placing the call to action ad, which addressed the bills that you have mentioned. And it is very clear that when the municipalities work together and the citizens raise their voices, good things can happen. So we're not done, but I do say thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you for helping with the voice of the people. Madam Clerk.
I have an email to read. Hello, this is Adam Stedman. I live on Dutchman Creek Road. I would like to briefly follow up on the comments that I made during the meeting last month. I ran into one of the aldermen at the store yesterday, and he was kind enough to speak to me for a few minutes about my budget concerns. My understanding is that the aldermen are working to ensure revenue neutrality for the current budget, which is great news. As I noted during the last meeting, the taxpayers of this town deserve a break after the 35% ad valorem increase imposed last year, as well as the 17 to 18% average increase imposed as a result of the non-revenue neutral tax re-evaluation 4 years ago. The recent utility rate increases also add to ever-growing taxpayer burden. Please consider these facts as you decide on discretionary budget items. Another concern is with regard to the state of our roads. Nearly all town roads other than the state-maintained thoroughfares are in poor shape. The roads in my neighborhood continue to deteriorate as the months and years pass. I find myself constantly avoiding potholes and sunken edges. Any revenue expenditure going forward should focus upon improving our road infrastructure. I would strongly recommend dedicating a portion of ad valorem tax revenue as well as a portion of the general fund for this specific purpose. Also, to reduce the burden of the town police force and to minimize town expenditure, I would recommend establishing a volunteer-based tourism committee to interact with peak season visitors and to make note of any incidents along our waterfront. I have spoken with several retired residents who have plenty of free time and would be interested in such an endeavor. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in public comment that did not sign up? I see two hands. One at a time. Yes, sir. Just state your name, your address, and your topic. Good to see you, sir.
There we go. Hi, I'm Larry Ashley. I live at 637 Wild Rose Way. Had to fly down here because I was reading the, you guys have an awfully big agenda, so I won't talk. 418 pages, that's crazy. But I'm here because I wanted to spend a few moments talking about the social media policy that you're going to be talking about tonight. I've sat on your side of the table. I fully believe in transparency in government. Problem is, I don't think the transparency should reach into my living room, shouldn't reach into my computer, or even to my camera for that matter. As you know, I'm on the, some of you may know, I'm on the beautification committee. I'll take pictures, I'll post them up on Facebook as part of, for the work that beautification is doing. Recently I was told as part of that, I need to put a disclaimer saying I'm not speaking on behalf of beautification. So I thought, okay, last time I put some up, fine. You know, I put up a disclaimer saying, hey, these are just pictures. But I'm reading through the social media policy, and I'll tell you, it really distresses me because there's one part in there that says, as an appointed member, I'm authorized to have a personal social media account. I got to tell you, you're overstepping, because as a personal member, for you to say that I'm authorized, does that mean you can also take away that authority and say I'm unauthorized as an appointed member? So I just think there's an overreach here in the fact that when you look at this, we should be able to have a discourse as appointed officials, elected members, what have you, and we should be able to do it on a personal basis. We should be able to use those social media accounts. We should be able to use those emails. You shouldn't be muzzling people, and I do think it's muzzling because I look at this as, I take a lot of pictures in Southport, I post them, I enjoy working on beautification, love taking the pictures, love doing the work, love volunteering, but I think to say that I have to put a disclaimer up or not put anything up at all is really, it is such an overreach of government in my view to say that I have to do that sort of thing. I would encourage you, I think transparency, like I said, is fantastic, but not in my living room. So thank you for taking the time, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next gentleman.
Is this on? Can you hear me? I'm Gary Lindemuth. I live at 603 Longleaf Drive. The only concerns I have is with this new development. Is this retention pond part of the hammocks, or is this a brand new retention pond? Because if it's part of the hammocks, I don't know if any of you have been down there when it rains or we have a big bad storm. Fodell Avenue goes underwater. So right now you've got two streets coming off of Fodell. Is all that, are the roads going to be pitched back to the retention pond? Or are we going to allow the water to run down Fodell where we don't have any drainage? Because if you are, everybody, I'm looking at the development, to the right's going underwater. Because the last storm we had, the water was higher than the what do you call it, the voltage box that sits there. All the houses, the water was coming to their front door. If we have a 5-day rain event with 5 inches of rain, they're going under. And who's going to pay for that? I'm just a neighbor. I won't go under. I'm high. But I worry about my neighbors because every one of them said they got water in their crawl space that far from the floor. So this development, if it goes on like this, are they going to pitch it? And where's that retention pond going to take the water? Is it going to be like the hammocks? Because the one in the back, that drains to the front, which is a small retention pond. And it has a spillway, and that goes into Fodell. So that water is going to run down to the lowest part on Fodell and put everybody underwater. So you do what you want. I mean, I'm just telling you what's going to happen. And that everybody on Fodell is going to be suing. I mean, if I lived there, I'd be suing. But that's another story. Want me to hit the button? I get a little passionate.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, excellent, good public comment, thank you. Item E, before we get to approval of the agenda, I'm going to read the ethics statement. If any members know of any conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest concerning matters on the agenda, please so state at this time. Okay, no one? Well, I have a conflict, and I would like to read a statement concerning item H11 on the agenda, system development fee, utility rate study, engineer selection. I have a family member that works for this firm, Withers Ravenel. They are one of 400 employees. They were not involved in any way and will not be involved with any business related to the city of Southport. I will recuse myself from the discussion and the vote. I will only facilitate. Item E, approval of the agenda as is, except for the removal of item N, which is the closed session. There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lombardi. Any further discussion? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move agenda item, the social media item to number 1. Get it out of the way while the press is here and while everybody is fresh.
I'll second it. He simply wants to move item 9 to item 1.
Item 1. Yeah. And we have a motion and we have a second by Alderman Carroll. Any further discussion? No. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously. All right, thank you. Item F, approval of the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the minutes from the review workshop April 11th. We have the minutes of the regular Board of Aldermen meeting on April 13th. And then we have the minutes of the Board of Aldermen budget workshop April 21st. And we also have a resolution, item 4, requesting Brunswick County approval of ETJ Planning Board member Chris Jones. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay, Alderman Allen. Alderman Carroll. You know, y'all sound alike, although you don't look alike. You look much younger, Alderman Allen. So, Alderman Carroll, is there a second? By Alderman Lowe Davis. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously on approval of the consent agenda. Item G is special recognition, and I'm always pleased to do these proclamations. May has more than most months, and usually we don't do 4, but I think we have 4 compelling proclamations, and I will come up and read them. And I'm happy to have with us nurses tonight, Sally Pollard from the emergency department and Jill Stinson from our patient care unit. So thank you for being here. And if you will come up and stand with me while I read this, and then we'll do a picture afterwards, okay, with the presentation. Whereas over the 4 million registered nurses in the United States constitute our nation's largest healthcare profession, whereas the nursing profession plays a critical role in improving patient outcomes, increasing access, coordinating care, and reducing healthcare costs. Whereas the depth and scope of the registered nursing profession meet the different and emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide variety of settings. And whereas more qualified registered nurses will be needed in the future to meet the increasingly complex needs of healthcare consumers in this community. And whereas, along with the American Nurses Association, the mayor of the city of Southport has declared the week of May 6th through 12th as National Nurses Week. Whereas the nurses of Dr. J. Arthur Dozier Memorial Hospital continue a tradition of healing and caring to all who enter her doors for over 90 years. Whereas the nurses of Dozier Memorial Hospital follow in the footsteps of registered nurses in the old Dozier Hospital who exemplified excellence in nursing and were well known to the citizens of Southport. Marie Brown, RN, Director of Nursing for many years, and set the standard for nursing directors. Vera Howard, RN, a nurse for many years and Director of Nursing from 1968 until retirement in 1971. And Julia Daniel, RN, head nurse in the emergency department for many years and known as Miss Julia to Southport natives. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the City of Southport Board of Aldermen and the residents join in honoring the registered nurses who care for all of us. And be it further resolved that the City of Southport Board of Aldermen and residents show our appreciation for registered nurses, not just during this week, but at every opportunity throughout the year. Signed this 11th day of May, 2023. Thank you again, ladies, for being here, and please extend our best to all the nurses at the hospital. City of Southport proclamation in support of National Police Week. Whereas there are approximately 700,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the City of Southport's Police Department. Whereas law enforcement officers routinely put their health and safety on the line to help others. And whereas since the first recorded law enforcement death in 1786, almost 22,000 law enforcement officers have been killed in the line of duty. And whereas an average of 226 law enforcement officers are killed each year in the line of duty. And whereas North Carolina experienced 9 law enforcement deaths in 2022, and whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. Whereas May 15th, 2023 is Peace Officers Memorial Day. And whereas the Southport Police Department continues a tradition of excellence and integrity in law enforcement and embodies neighborly, approachable policing. And whereas the Southport Police Department faces an influx of thousands of tourists 4 months out of the year, they accept the challenge with a gracious determination and ready presence to keep our citizens and our city safe, whether on patrol, on bicycles, or walking our streets. And now, therefore, let it be resolved that the City of Southport formally designates May 15th through 21, 2023 as National Police Week in Southport, North Carolina, and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and across the nation. I believe Chief is working right now, otherwise I would present it to him. Next is the City of Southport proclamation in appreciation of the military. Whereas May is designated as National Military Appreciation Month, and a time to remember and appreciate the men and women who have and are currently serving the United States Armed Forces. And whereas our military continues to play a vital role in the global war on terrorism and disaster relief missions to secure our freedoms. And whereas the sacrifice made by these individuals have helped to preserve the liberties that have enriched this nation. And whereas community members, businesses, military bases, and other organizations are encouraged to recognize military members and their loved ones with special recognition during the month of May. And whereas between 2006 and 2021, approximately 18,571 active duty military personnel were killed while serving their country, proving that freedom is not free. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Joseph P. Hatem, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Military Appreciation Month and officially recognize the many sacrifices made by our veterans, service members, wounded warriors, their families, and their survivors. And we do so on this day, 11th of May, 2023. So we salute all our military and thank them for what they do for us. They're there every day, every night, every morning. As we go through our routine in life, they are out there, just like our police, just like all our first responders, but in particular our military. This is our last proclamation is National Hurricane Preparedness Week. Whereas National Hurricane Preparedness Week, April 30th through May 6, 2023. Whereas in past years, catastrophic hurricanes have had a devastating effect on the coast of North Carolina and neighboring states. And whereas hurricanes pose a serious threat to North Carolina by producing heavy rains, inland flooding, devastating winds, and tornadoes. And whereas hurricanes are most likely to occur between June 1st and November 30th. And whereas Hurricane Florence made landfall in Southport on September 14th, 2018 as a Category 1 storm, but lingered for days, causing unprecedented flooding. And whereas Hurricane Dorian made landfall on the southern coast of North Carolina as a Category 2 on September 5th, 2019. And whereas Hurricane Isaias made landfall as a Category 1 on August 3rd, 2020, causing damage to the city dock and marina area and creating a pile of boats at the Southport Marina and surrounding neighborhoods. And whereas Southport has a long history of hurricane damage and perseverance, and whereas it is important that all North Carolinians be aware of the dangers they present, particularly to coastal regions, whereas we must remain vigilant and plan to prepare to lessen the loss of life and minimize property damage. And whereas the National Weather Service and the North Carolina Department of Public Safety have joined together, urging all citizens to prepare for hurricanes and to educate themselves on hurricane preparedness and safety strategies. Therefore, in official recognition of this national event, I, Joseph P. Hatem, Mayor, do hereby proclaim April 30th through May 6th National Hurricane Preparedness Week for the city of Southport. And Chief Drew, if you would come up, and I would like to present this to you and thank you for your service.
Sleep on another damn cot in the cops' office. Yeah, they're not that bad. They're bunks. They just got bunks. Oh, that's true. A lap of luxury.
Thank you. Agenda item 1, will be our social media policy. I'll call on City Attorney, Mr. Brady Herman.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of the Board of Aldermen. So staff approached me along with the city manager to help them put together this social media policy in front of you this evening. Obviously, this is a policy decision by you all, so you are free to adjust what I've presented to you tonight, add, delete anything you want, or choose not to go and adopt this policy. But the intent behind me being involved with this is not for this to go and infringe on your First Amendment right to free speech. And in fact, legally, I don't think it does. What it does do, though, is set forth some requirements, not only for this board, but also the other appointed boards and committees of the city, and as well as to establish sort of a way for the different boards to go about and create a social media account through the city. And so I first want to go through just a couple of the highlights that I think are the main important items. Essentially, I think a lot of what's in here, regardless of social media, are standards that you all must adhere to anyway. For example, privileged confidential information, record retention, and some other requirements that's otherwise in the town Board of Ethics policy. But I think one of the key things here is really this policy can fit in one of two scenarios. Where it doesn't apply is if you all or another board have a personal social media account and you don't discuss any sort of city business. This policy does not apply in that scenario. The other scenario is you have a personal social media account and you use it some for personal and some to go and discuss city business, then this would go and apply. And the third scenario is if you want to have a social media account sort of as your platform as a public official, I'll use this board as an example, then you can get that registered through the city. It's up to you, but the helpful part of that, and I might have to punt those type of administrative questions to Cheyenne, who, by the way, she helped me a lot on this policy, as well as Bonnie and the assistant city manager. What that does is it goes and helps with record retention, right? So if you discuss city business, no matter what sort of platform it comes from or a private computer, that is a public record. So one of the things with that, and I think one of the keys to this policy, is putting the disclaimer on your social media account when you're speaking about city business that it's coming from your personal opinion. It's not coming from the board as a whole, unless the board obviously gives you the direction to be able to speak on behalf of the board. So really that's kind of the big sort of, I would say, addition to this policy that otherwise wouldn't be applied regardless if it involves social media or an email. The other one is too, and this came from a recent, I believe it was a Supreme Court case, and essentially said that if you're a public official and you open up your social media account, it constitutes the public forum. So with that, you cannot delete or hide posts based on the viewpoint of whatever post that is. So that's also included in the social media policy. And the second section kind of deals with the procedures when the particular board wants to go and create a social media account. So I know there's probably some questions from this board. I'll stop there. If anyone has any sort of specifics, I guess I'll end with this, that again, this is up to you all, but I put in there that a violation of this policy would be a censure according to the Board of Ethics policy. And then I added in there that the right to be able to appeal that decision of censure could go to state or federal court based on an infringement of the First Amendment. So I don't know if you all got my most revised copy, but that's the only adjustment that's not otherwise in your agenda packet. But happy to entertain any questions that you all have.
Attorney Brady, I appreciate all the work that you put into this. And I would like to, at this point, make a motion that we do not adopt this policy.
Did anyone have any, hate to have some questions before we,
Well, we go into discussion as soon as we
Okay.
are at a motion and a second, and then we can ask you questions during that time.
Okay, if I understood it's a motion to reject it. If somebody seconds it, then we'll have discussion. Is
Yes.
that correct? Then I will second it.
Okay. I'm willing to start, and I appreciate all the work and effort you went into on this. You have gone to considerable lengths to keep us on the inside or on the outside of violating, I think, the First Amendment. However, there is the law and there is the spirit of the law, and the principle underlying this policy is simply wrong. And the reason I think that we should not adopt this is that it is unnecessary. And worse yet, it intrudes on our First Amendment rights as board members and as individual citizens. Its frequent use of the word prohibit, I think, smacks of censorship. The policy as written should be rejected, also because it's redundant. It's an overreach of our role and our authority as the city's governing body. State law, plus our own city code of ethics, plus the city's standards of employee conduct and performance, these all already exist. So adopting this policy would amount to an unnecessary flexing of board authority where it is simply not needed. And for example, item 3 says that officials are authorized to have a personal social media account. And this is, frankly, offensive and intrusive, as a member of the public has already pointed out. It presumes that the board has a power that we do not have. Just think about it. The logical flip side of this is that the city would have the authority to prevent us from having a personal media account, social media account. So no. Item 7 says officials are prohibited, there's that word again, from violating the law. Well, no kidding. You mean we can't break the law? The law is the law. It exists. It is utterly unnecessary and a waste of time for this board to assert a power that already exists. Item 8 also says officials are prohibited from violating the open records law. Again, that law exists. The state, not the Board of Aldermen, has the authority. So again, this is entirely unnecessary. Item 10, and this is the doozy, says city officials are prohibited from using social media to engage in any activity that constitutes or creates the appearance of a conflict of interest. Appearance is subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder. This policy item is bordering on telling someone what to think and how to think and what they can say about what they think, which strikes at the heart of one of our basic rights as U.S. citizens. I'm referring, of course, to the First Amendment, which enshrined our freedom as citizens to express our thoughts and opinions without fear of censorship. When the U.S. Constitution was signed on September the 17th, 1787, it did not contain that essential freedom because the Founding Fathers thought it was self-evident in the underlying principles of the Constitution. but the populace disagreed. They expressly wanted to distinguish our government from that of England's, which had long censored and prosecuted persons who dared to criticize the British Crown. So on December the 5th, 1791, a year before the founding of this city, the nation's founding fathers added 10 amendments, known as our Bill of Rights. And in a mere 44 words, the First Amendment established our right to freely express our opinions. A landmark case upholding that right was a unanimous Supreme Court decision in 1998 when, and I'm sorry to cite this one, but it is a perfect case, the televangelist Jerry Falwell sued Hustler magazine and publisher Larry Flint. Falwell claimed defamation, but Flint argued that his unflattering portrayal of Falwell was protected by the First Amendment. The justices held their noses and agreed with Flint, and Chief Justice William Rehnquist said, and I'm quoting from him, "At the heart of the First Amendment is the recognition of the fundamental importance of the free flow of ideas and opinions on matters of public interest and concern. The freedom to speak one's mind is not only an aspect of individual liberty, and thus a good unto itself, but it also is essential to the common quest for truth and the vitality of society as a whole. We have therefore been particularly vigilant to ensure that individual expressions of ideas remain free from governmentally imposed sanctions. This proposed social media is, in its essence, a limitation on that freedom, and it should not be approved."
Just a couple of things. Identifying the need for social media policies is not a new conversation for this board. I went back through my notes and found that during the board retreat in February of 2018, the need for media and social media policies was recognized, and at the March 2019 regular board meeting, the Board of Aldermen unanimously adopted a social media policy for city employees. That was over 4 years ago. In September of 2022, our public information officer did a presentation that included a discussion about branding and social media. The official notes from the board's strategic planning meeting on January 19th of this year, identifying strengths and weaknesses in the city. According to the notes that from our board meeting, the city's first internal strength that this board identified was city staff. And the first internal weakness that the board recognized was policies. We identified city policies and the lack of policies as a weakness. The proposed policy is important to us as elected officials, and it's equally important to have this policy codified for appointed board and committee members. The Planning Board, Board of Adjustment, Beautification and Forest Committee, and Parks and Recs, to be able to give them the rules. I appreciate that you know the law, but the reason we do policy, a lot of our policies are the law, but it's a policy that we're codifying so that we can hand it to somebody and that you can have it. Staff crafted this policy and then had it reviewed by our attorney. And I would like, if possible, to have staff come up and speak about the policy, if you know, just so we can understand what their thought process behind it. I mean, and I don't disagree. I don't fully understand a disclaimer for photos of beautification, so that's a different conversation. I don't fully understand that. but I would like to, if possible.
Can I just say also that in 2018, when you were referring to this, only 5 members of this board, and nor the mayor, were on that board. So we weren't part of that crafting of a social media policy. And 4 of us are on this board in response in part to the efforts of that board of aldermen, we're going back 2 boards, to shut down public comment.
Can we maybe have a little more discussion before Cheyenne? Is that appropriate, or Rich, do you have something?
I wanted to understand just her background, I mean, the background of why we need a social media policy. I think it's important. I mean, I get we've all got opinions, but staff, we turn to staff for policy and ask to have this done. And we have our attorney, they work together. So I think it's important to know what they viewed and why we have this policy.
Well, the only question that I really have on this particular point is, I'm going to quote somebody from this who sits here. Southport has no policies and procedures. And when they were challenged on that, the response was, Southport has no policies and procedures. We virtually have nothing on nothing. We didn't have anything on HR until Patty was hired. Decades went by. We have no policy, and this has bubbled to the top. This is the most quintessential thing that we have to do. And gentleman in the pink shirt, I've missed your name, and I apologize for that. But you are correct. Words matter. A justice on the Supreme Court hung his hat on the Second Amendment on a comma. So words matter, and this thing is filled with inappropriate statements in it. This is a bad policy, and I have no idea why we have started with this as the most important policy, except come this November. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about this November. If you want to...
You want to expand on that, please, Mr. Alt?
Because this is going to be used as a bludgeon for anybody who disagrees.
What are you talking about? Don't put your hand up at me and dismiss me like that in a meeting. I don't appreciate that.
Well, okay.
Yeah, we'll do it again then. How about this? Talk to the hand, huh? Good problem.
As we go through this discussion this evening, which may be quite some time, I will explain in detail what I was referring to. If the staff, Alderman Mostel, if you would like to have the staff talk now, be my guest.
Yeah, and as long as staff's comfortable doing that, and I don't want you to be put on the spot or anything, but I know you're our public information officer, and that's what this is in relation.
John, if you just want to give background up until you got it to me.
Yeah, just stick to the facts of where you found it, and you know, that's it. I don't want you in the middle of this.
Understood. So just brief history. I'm going on 10 and a half months of being in this position. I started mid to late June of 2022. Yeah, we're in 2023 now. Whenever I started with the city, we had already had a social media policy adopted. So March 14th, 2019. So that was under, at the time, City Manager Oakley, who adopted it. It was kind of a policy that was done quickly under the gun. There's not really any specifics to it except for essentially behave online, which in 2019, that was really all that was needed for any sort of online behavior, so to speak, policy. So coming into post-COVID and social media and the internet being what it is now and constantly changing and growing, coming in and being tasked with something from previous city manager Hargrove saying, hey, we have this thing, but your predecessor was starting to work on an updated version. You need to work on it as well. So this is something that we can continue to update because it is starting to be outdated. So that was one of the first projects that I got when I sat down in my office. So I got started on that. From that time, I registered for the FEMA PIO class, which is more emergency management based. But in that class, we also learned about social media and how to use that in not only emergent situations, but also non-emergent situations, but also what can be considered an emergent situation, which is PR emergencies. And we've all seen it. We see it every day, throughout the day, PR emergencies that happen because somebody said something online that they shouldn't have. So the basis of this policy and where it really comes from, it is a cover your behind, essentially. And I don't say you as anybody specifically, but as the board, capital B board, as the board, this is a CYB for everybody. So that if something happens, accident or otherwise, we can say, hey, we're covered, we've got you. This goes into that training and policy and procedure to say, hey, we know best practice. We are well informed, we as the city, we as the board, we're well informed, we know what we're talking about, we are best educated in Brunswick County in North Carolina. We're staying up to the general statutes with North Carolina. We're staying up to date with what the UNC School of Government is sending to us in March 24th, I think it was. I went up to Chapel Hill and participated in the UNC School of Government Social Media for Social Good class. And I sat in, I think there was 29 other municipal public information officers. And we sat in and we roundtabled and we got trained by the School of Government on the most current and most up-to-date social media practices for local government officials and policies and cases that have hit the Supreme Court, that have hit local and North Carolina courts, to best protect our cities, our citizens, and our boards, our staff, and our people, to make sure that we're taking care of our boards, our committees of the boards. So that's what this policy is for. It's not telling you what you can and cannot post, but how to post it safely, for lack of a better word. So yes, there's some, for lack of a better word, aggressive language or what you might think is in there, but it's because it's the legal of it. We have to make sure that what is in here is helpful for you.
If I may, you just made a comment that you're not telling us what to post, but in paragraph 3, the last sentence there, it says, this is, although the city acknowledges its officials have the First Amendment right to free speech, the right is not absolute. That means that you are telling me that I can't post something. I'm speaking for someone that doesn't have social media. However, let's go to the first paragraph where it defines what social media is. And it's not just Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. It goes on to say that social media is every site affiliated with those, chat rooms, blogs, personal websites, web bulletin boards. So it seems a little more than social media. I can continue if you'd like to discuss some of the concerns. The other concern is officials are prohibited from using professional social media accounts to circumvent election or campaign requirements. I don't have an issue with that because obviously we shouldn't be doing that. That's law. But it goes on to say to campaign for re-election or to endorse other candidates for public office. So I can do this if I walk door to door, but I can't do it on social media. So if I take the time to go door to door and introduce myself as Robert Carroll, Alderman, I can, basically run, campaign for re-election, but I can't do that on social media or on my personal website or.
That is one of those things with the policy that if y'all would like to change,
That's
This is-
certainly, I could.
this is a broad thing.
Yeah, I
I'm not
could-
going to make
that
that
Yeah,
language
I
is
get it. The
overstepping.
devils are in the details, but this is why, again, it's a policy that you all are essentially gonna, if you want to go and pursue this, you can go and craft. And now we see your side that there are words in here that can be changed. I mean, like, for example, in the authorize, right? I mean, that could just say elected and appointed officials have the right to operate a personal social media account. I mean, there's ways we can go about to fix some of the language, and I get it. If it's going to go and bind this board, but more importantly, future boards, we want to go and get it right. So, we are happy to delete paragraphs that might be redundant, like paragraph 7. I mean, me and Shine don't really have a whole lot of heartburn about some of the sections. I will have to say, I think section 3 with the disclaimer, that would be my recommendation that you all keep something along the lines of that section.
Can we let Cheyenne sit down?
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't have anything further?
What I would say is, I'm a firm believer that we need a social media policy, so this in no way means that I don't think we need a policy. I want to be clear. But I don't have a problem. I'm not going to vote to not adopt it, but I don't have a problem sending it back to Brady and to Cheyenne to reconsider, now that you've heard some of our dialogue, to revisit that and bring it back. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know how anybody else feels. Because I do want the question about the photos answered,
And I'll just say this, if we were gonna go down that route, me and Cheyenne would just need somewhat pretty clear direction on what the consensus is from this board of what you all wanna see changed. I mean, I've heard stuff tonight, I've highlighted sections, but that way it would be, a little bit more efficient if this does come back.
and maybe if y'all could do it and then we could revisit it in a workshop rather than trying to sit here at the table and give you that information.
Well, I'm a little confused.
Well, let me clear it up. I think what she's saying is that why don't we, instead of just declining it altogether, we could make a motion to send it back to Cheyenne and to the attorney and let them make some changes that they've heard tonight, and then we bring it back to a workshop and put the language in there that you want. The key is to have a social media policy that fits, that works. Our staff has recommended it, and so I know the board likes to go with staff recommendations. Not to put words in your mouth, Mayor Pro Tem, but is that what we're looking for here?
It's not what I'm looking for, I tell you that. I'm here. You guys drew the line in the sand here. I'm here to talk all night. At the end of the night, I may be right in your corner. After we get to say everything, and we give our attorneys some guidance as to what our concerns are. But if we were to stop right now, he has no idea all of my concerns, and he would not be able to guess them. So I would like to continue talking. And at the end, I'm willing to revisit your motion.
Well, it wasn't a motion yet, but anyway. But I'm glad. I mean, it's whatever you need to say. Sure, I'm not telling you not to talk.
Are you going? Are you done? What do you want me to do?
I just want to put in the 2 cents about the photo conversation and with the committees.
Are you done, ma'am? Okay. If it's okay, I speak, sir? Okay. I'm going to read something first, and I'm reading it for a particular purpose. It gives you an idea of the law behind this, or the reasons why we have it. We had an open meeting the other day, and we were asked to raise our hands, and we had a social media policy, social media account that was work-related, and I'm the only one that raised my hand. So, am I the one-off, or has the courts actually endorsed all of this? So I'm going to read this, I'm going to ask questions about the document, and then I'm going to ask our lawyer a number of questions about what would violate this document as written. Social media has revolutionized the ways politicians engage with their constituents and communicate their message. This shift has been embraced by politicians at all levels of government, from the local to the national. In recent years, there have been several cases in the U.S. District Court and appeals courts that have recognized the benefits of politicians using social media as a tool for public engagement. Increased visibility. Social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook allow politicians to reach a larger audience than traditional media platforms. In this case, in this environment that we live in, we get to speak about specific topics that are on the agenda, but we don't get to talk about the more global things until the very end of the night, when most of you are gone, the people at home have fallen asleep, and the fourth estate has left the building. So this increased visibility has been recognized by the courts as an important benefit of social media use. Remember, direct communication. Social media allows politicians to communicate directly with their constituents without middlemen. This benefit has also been recognized by the courts. In the case of Davison versus Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, the U.S. District Court of the Eastern District of Virginia recognized that social media had become a primary channel for communication between elected officials and the citizens. It's cost effective. Social media is low cost way for politicians to reach out to the citizens. This benefit may be recognized in several cases, including the First Night Amendment Institute versus Trump case. The court noted that the president's use of Twitter was a cost-effective way to communicate with the public, especially in comparison to more traditional methods like press conferences and official statements. It provides feedback. Social media is particularly effective at engaging younger voters, who are more likely to use social media than traditional media. This benefit has been recognized in several cases, including the Davison versus Loudoun Board of Supervisors. The court noted that social media provided a unique opportunity for younger citizens to engage with their elected officials and participate in the political process. Social media has become an essential tool for politicians who want to connect with their citizens and win elections. The courts have recognized the benefits of social media, including increased visibility, direct communication, cost effectiveness, faster feedback, and youth engagement. As social media continues to evolve, it is likely that it will become even more important part of the political process. So that is the framework of where I'm coming from. This is not some unique thing that just happened to pop up on the Board of Aldermen in the metropolitan area of Southport. This is across the country. It really took off in 2008, in the presidential election of 2008, and has been accepted ever since that time. So I'm going to go back to the report that we have in our hand right now. We've already talked about number 3 and whether or not you can be authorized, whether this body has the authority to authorize us to give us permission, and that word obviously can be changed. Under number 4, the city does not archive or manage personal social media accounts for elected officials. Thus, the official is solely responsible for the retention and archival of content published to personal social media accounts. I'm not sure, Counselor, how that line fits into I'm working with staff to do something. They look like they're in conflict.
What it pertains to is if you're using social media and talking about public business, then it would be a public record.
Correct. I understand that. And it has to be kept.
Correct.
But is it being kept by the city, or is it being kept on the cloud? I mean, do I have to forward everything to the city? How would I do that?
You would go and be responsible unless you went and did the professional social media account, and I believe, and Cheyenne might know more of the administrative part of that, they would be able to save it for you.
There are various ways to archive on social media. So like one way to do it is like print screen, so you can screenshot and print things. Like there are some folks in municipalities that have binders, like every post that they have, they do a print screen of the entire page, so that way it's date and time stamped, and they do it in a binder. The city's method is Archive Social. It's a paid service, so that way it is automatically archived, so that is saved in a database. So we have all 12 of our official city sites archived through Archive Social. There are other accounts, like web accounts like that as well, but there are various ways to archive or have a record of what's posted on social media. Those are just two different
Well, in the
methods.
back half of this, it talks about what the city will do with their social media. If I was to do it that route, are you saying that I would have an account, and if I'm using the back end of this document, a number of people would have the passwords for it because you've got the account and we're archiving it, we're doing all of that just to archive the document?
So as a city account, so for a city official account, I would not have access to the personal Facebook account linked to the business account, but I would need to, I say I since I'm the PIO, I would just need admin access to that business account. I would not post to that account, but if something were to happen to you, and God forbid that happens, that's not what I'm saying, but if something were to happen, we as the city would still be able to go and have access to that account to be able to go and do spot checks. That is in compliance with the North Carolina General Statute, but we would not have access to your personal, not city-affiliated account.
Is it, and maybe I missed it, is there an obligation that you have admin access to our professional page?
If it is a city-affiliated account.
So if it's Robert Carroll Alderman, I'd be obligated to give you admin access to that page.
If it is a official city account, yes, that is through the North Carolina General Statute.
Would Robert Carroll Alderman be an official city account? Yes or
Yes.
no? Thank you. Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's not going to happen. Yeah. So I guess my question is, and maybe I'm just being dunce, ma'am. I have an account. I believe it's ritual for Alderman, something like that. It may even have a date. That's my account, and I have a personal account that I talk about my grandchildren on, okay? My account that says Richard Alderman is not a city official account. It's Richard's account, just like all the other people who are politicians that have accounts. So it's not a city account. Is the state of North Carolina or any of the appeals courts, especially the fourth because that's where we're sitting, have said that all politicians, legislators who have an account and are talking about their business have to have it go through a government agency to have access and all the things you just talked about?
If it's as long as it is archived, it does not need to go through the government agency. So if you archive it, no.
So if I archive it in the cloud, and I gave in this case, my wife, the access, should I get run over out in this parking lot at the end of the night, she would be able to give it to the government after that point.
Not the cloud. It would need to be either in the cloud is not archivable. So like iCloud, for example, or like the Google Cloud, it would need to be a archivable solution. So something that...
So I could put a separate hard drive and just pull it over there all the time. And that would be good. Okay, I'll follow up with you offline because people's eyes are starting to glaze over, including my own. So, but thank you, and once again, you got thrown in the middle of a debate here, and I apologize for that. And while I'm at it, I'm going to apologize to Alderman Allen because he is right. It is a twitch that I have when I put my hand up, and I apologize for that. Okay, so on number 7, officials are prohibited from using professional social media accounts to circumvent election or campaign requirements. Could you tell me what those would be? Because I was on the phone today with the Board of Elections in Bolivia. I've researched the campaign manual from the Board of Elections, and I don't know how I could violate their rules. I'm allowed to make announcements on it. I'm allowed to solicit money on it. Now, once I get the money, I have to register that I got the money, because you do that for all money that came in. But I asked them, I said, they were trying to write a policy and it has a sentence in it. Can you give me examples how I could violate this? That would not be violating, all the main things like I'm threatening violence or something like that. But I have no idea how I can circumvent the election campaign requirements, and they had no idea either. So, Counselor, could you help me with that?
Yeah, that was from a template that we had, and I'm completely fine with deleting that whole section. It sounds like, at least from some members of the board, that might be either redundant or unclear. I personally don't know exactly what the campaign requirements. I'm sure there's a scenario where one could go and violate it, but if this board is concerned with that, I have no heartburn at all with removing that whole paragraph.
While we're at it, can we address the concern about giving access to an official page? So if it's Robert Carroll Alderman, I don't want to give the city access to that.
Well, then you just need to archive it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
My understanding, I had no idea of how this all admin stuff worked while I was writing this, but my understanding of what was in here is you have the choice to go and make a quote-unquote city business account, so they would be able to help archive it. But there's no mandate to go and do that.
Well, then the wording needs to be clearer.
That's just the direction that we need to, be able to flush some of this stuff out. So we'll certainly make a note on that one.
So on number 8, officials are prohibited from deleting posts and related comments regarding the city-related matters, yada, yada, in North Carolina law. And obviously this law kind of mirrors the Trump case. So the question I have is, back here, somewhere back here, there's a whole caveat for the city that if I have a post, and almost every post, I believe every post, I ask the citizens to tell me if I'm going off the tracks. I tell them to give me their thoughts. They don't have to be in agreement with me, and I want to hear from them. If somebody gets on that and makes vile, crazy, violent threats, the strict wording of this forces me to keep that up. Yet under the city's rules, you can lay out a program in which you can take those down if they meet your policy. But I'm not offered the same benefit as that?
Yeah, I can't remember if that was included before, but I was trying to steer away from the subjectiveness. So because I think, again, words matter. So what's derogatory to one person may not be to another. I mean, as insane as that sounds, that's why
I don't care if we have some kind of, rather than just putting it on the sole owner of the account to do that, but the city has some ability in this policy to do that. They can take things down that someone figures out is bad.
I don't disagree. But
also,
if
they can do it, I should be able to do it.
Some of the other, no, I don't disagree. So if we want to add that as well into the,
because I would like to have some way, if you're sitting up there and you're saying, I want to bomb this building, I don't know that I want to keep that up. I don't want to keep violent stuff up. If you say, I totally disagree with Rich Alton, I think you're a jerk, then I'll keep that up. That's okay, because it's no violence to it. It is free speech.
Well, as you know, threat and some other type of speech that you're talking about is not protected speech. So
it is not, but this says I have to keep unprotected speech up.
I understand.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we've talked about this already, but I'll bring it up. Officials are prohibited from using social media to engage in any activity that constitutes or creates the appearance of a conflict of interest. I don't know if there's a violation of law with an appearance of conflict of interest. Every meeting, have a statement that if we think there is an appearance, we should talk about that and clear it up. The mayor reads that every time. But if there's an appearance of conflict of interest, but there is no conflict of interest, how does that paragraph work? I'm not allowed to do anything that might have an appearance of conflict of interest, and who's a trier of fact of that thing? And then, if it's not a real conflict, well, what violation do I have? Can I be censured for an appearance?
I think the word appearance probably needs to be deleted.
Okay. So, over my number of months I've been elected, I want to ask, Council, I want to ask you some questions. I want to make sure that I don't fall prey to being censured. Do I have to, if I'm sitting up here and I'm seeing the vote count going and I realize it's going to be 4-2, 5-1, do I have to change my vote to have a unanimous decision?
No.
Okay, because I've been told I should do that. The second one is, we were just told in the last 10 days this. Can you imagine, and I'm paraphrasing, can you imagine if 6 aldermen decided to talk on a topic and they all had different opinions on it, how that would be confusing to the citizens? We just can't have that. Is there a violation of something if 6 of us have 6 different opinions and we all express it to these people? Can we have, is that a censurable issue?
To have differentiating
Difference of opinions.
I think that's the whole point of democracy.
Well, that's where I was coming from too, but we were just told that we shouldn't have that.
Just told by whom and when and how, I don't understand.
We were told that within the last 10 days by somebody sitting up here.
I'm not gonna I'll just point out to the public that I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about.
Well, I've spoken
And I don't believe it actually happened, but.
I have one choice here, 2 choices. I can just let that slide, which is what I'm going to do, because I'm going to get into a contest of asking aldermen what they heard, and I know what they were going to say, and it's pitting us against each other, and I think that's in bad taste.
I think it is too, and that's why you shouldn't have done it.
Well, I was told we can't have it, and I want to know if we do have it, am I going to be censured? And the answer is no, I can't be censured for that.
I'd like to just apologize to you guys. Not for you, John. I appreciate that. I apologize that we're sitting here discussing this in this meeting. We actually have business to take care of.
Well, we could go right straight to a vote to have this removed and done away with altogether, if you would like to do that. I don't mind jumping right to that conclusion.
Why can't we work on it in a workshop? I mean, I feel like you've given a lot of information to Brady, and it doesn't mean that one workshop is what it would come out of. But
Hey, I've been asking at workshops that we take this off the agenda, and y'all don't want to.
So a very, very lively discussion, but this is more of we're at a workshop topic right now. We're certainly not ready for a vote. What we put on if you look at the other items on the agenda that I reviewed, these are ready for, there's clear, it's ready, and that type of thing, ready for a vote. And there'll be some discussion. For example, selection of an audit firm. It's going to be pretty straightforward. And we try not to put anything on the agenda that's going to require a workshop type discussion, which is what you have been witnessing, and that's what the workshops are for. So it's up to the board, and I will certainly entertain a motion that, I know we already have a motion, but
I'm willing to
unless it's withdrawn or amended to say that we send this to a workshop, that city staff works on the recommendations that they have received, and then bring it back to a workshop.
I so amend.
Is there a second?
So let me get this straight. You're amending it to go back.
The original motion is,
It's the person who did the second, isn't it?
well, the original motion is that we do not approve this policy. I'm amending it to say that we table it, to return it for further work and discussion at a workshop. So I need a second for that amendment.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second that we table the social media policy, that it goes back to staff and then to a workshop. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, the only discussion I have is, as I made an announcement the other day, that I'm going to be away from June 1st and I don't get back to the United States to June 18th, so I wouldn't be back in this building until the 19th. So as long as the workshop is after that, because I'd like to participate in it.
Oh, they won't have it ready by then. We'll be on budget, so you won't miss it. We wouldn't do it anyway without you. But no, you would not miss that. Any other further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion carried. So city staff, city attorney, you have your term paper received not a good grade and a lot of red marks on it. But let's look at it this way. Look at it this way. In city government, you have the opportunity to revise, to amend, to take your time. Where my other job, I don't have that luxury. I get about 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Am I right, Jill? I have to make a decision, and then that's it. I've got to go on. I mean, so this is good discussion, and we can revise and we can amend and that type thing. City Attorney, do you have any further comments on this? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your hard work, and we'll continue with the red pencils, and we'll get this rewritten. So thank you. If the city manager is still here, I will call on her for budget summary presentation.
Finally. Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here this evening. For those I have not met, my name is Bonnie Therian. I'm the city manager here in Southport, and we are in budget season, as I'm sure most of you know. I did this presentation at a workshop in April for the board. So what I'm presenting is my proposed budget. I want to make sure everybody realizes this, because the board is in deliberations right now. But I wanted to make sure, since I only did it at a workshop, that as many people as possible could hear my presentation so they have a basis for when the board starts doing deliberations and comes out with their proposed budget. So with that intro, when I was putting together this budget, I wanted to kind of mention what I was thinking when I was, and the department heads, we were trying to put this together. So the mayor and the board put together a strategic plan in January, so we wanted to use that as the basis for why we were asking for what we were going to ask for. The revaluation was certainly in my mind because I realized that everybody here, the average increase, excuse me, in home values was 44%. So on one side, that's wonderful news, and on the other side, everybody goes, oh my God, what's going to happen with taxes? So I have to keep that in mind to try to reduce that tax rate so that it does not incur a huge expense with the increased values. Also, I wanted to make sure we continued with the increase of capital items, which I'll be going into, and as well as the fund balance and using that to pay for those one-time expenses of capital. I will be going through personnel costs, salaries and benefits. Right now in the United States, the cost of living is 8.7% increase. So what I have recommended to the board is a 5% increase for the staff, which actually we're on the low side compared to the other communities. But also with a merit that could go up to 5%. That doesn't mean that people are getting 5%. But merit has not really been a part of the system for long here in Southport, and it really should be a part of the whole personnel system. So we have implemented that. In fact, we're all doing our first written evaluations right now as we speak. Training, huge. This city has not done enough training with their departments, with their department heads, with each and every employee. And so I want to make sure there's money in that budget to make sure we're training on project management, on emotional IQ, on how to deal with creative financing. You know, how can we achieve things without raising taxes? Emergency preparedness, which we already did training for all the employees, as well as active shooter, which we recently did with the help of the police, training for every single employee, which they had never had before. So extremely important. I want to make sure that our fixed costs are adequate, that we don't end up putting forward not enough money and then you have to go back to the fund balance or contingency. Keeping in mind all future mandates, the federal government, the state government. We have one that we have to complete fairly quickly, which is federal mandate to inspect all of our lead pipes. And we have to come up with a complete report on which ones have lead in them, which don't. I'm sure we're going to have to replace those that do, and that's going to be very, very costly. Again, I'll go through new positions that are prioritized and not in the budget. They are not in the budget. And so what the board is receiving right now is a maintenance budget. So some of the key points: your current tax rate is 0.3956 per 100 of assessed property value. My proposed budget goes down to 28.47 per 100. So the average home, which right now is averaged in Southport at $413,000, their taxes would be $1,176. This budget has a 0.26% increase in revenues. And I will note, too, that the expenditures have gone up, obviously, as everybody knows, with gasoline and everything else, but not at the same rate that had been in previously. Fund balances, which are sort of your emergency funds for municipalities. The general fund has very, very healthy fund balance at 60.7%. And somebody could say, well, you know, what do we have all that money for? You ever have a hurricane, and I'm sure we've all noticed that the weather in this country is getting worse and worse. You ever have a huge hurricane that comes in here and wipes out half this town? We don't have a healthy fund balance. I'm not sure we can put Southport back together. So you have always, especially in communities like this, have got to have a very healthy fund balance. Our water sewer account and our electricity account, which are considered what are called enterprise funds. So they are based on rates that the public pays. Right now, the water sewer has a 1.257% fund balance, and our electric account has a very healthy 62.6% fund balance. Very quickly, the capital list. These are all going to come out of the fund balance, not as a part of taxes. These are one-time expenses. They should come out of the fund balance. They're not recurring costs. So we have the comprehensive master plan. The city has not done a complete master plan since around, Travis, 16, 17, somewhere in there, 14. You have got to have a master plan. This is the chance for the public to come out and verbalize to the elected officials, this is what I want Southport to look like in 20 years or 25 years, 10 years, whatever. to not do a master plan in that amount of time, it's taken this long, it should not be happening. So it's very important we get that done. I have requested money for a city building survey. We do not have a really complete list of every city building. How long are the roofs going to last? How long is the HVAC system going to last? And on and on and on. So we don't have to put together a capital plan, any idea what all these costs are going to be to keep our city buildings and facilities up. So I am recommending that we do that in order to much easily budget for these types of things. Public services is in need of a dump truck. I did have this in capital thanks to Alderman Allen, who happened to say, gee, we could probably use Powell bill money, which we can. That'll be coming off the capital list, and we'll be able to use state Powell bill money in order to buy that. Stormwater issues, if you know anything about Southport, we have some problems. We have no plan. We have got to develop a plan on stormwater issues and start to address it. But the first thing is to put together the plan. City pier cross bracing for $87,000. That is something that's really needed for safety purposes. And also if there, hurricane comes in or something, but we have got to do something more to strengthen that. The decking right out here, we just realized this decking is in pretty poor shape. And again, if we had done a city building survey, we would have known this. So this comes up that all of a sudden we have to do this as soon as possible. So there is money in that to replace this, and we're going to put together options and bring them back to the board at a later date. The parking study was something that was requested by a board member. I think it's a great idea. We all know there's definitely parking problems here in Southport with all the visitors. So that would be a plan that we can try to put together to how we are going to address the issues here. And then in recreation, there's gazebo roofs that need to be replaced, and also a storage shed that's needed for recreation. These are the new personnel requests. Again, they are not in my budget. The way that I tend to do this is I put it in priority order. I give it back to the elected officials, and they can then make a decision. So in my case, I'm recommending an information technology staff member. Right now, we don't have that. We have a consultant on call as needed. And then we also have been requested for an additional building inspector, an additional permit technician. Just so you know, under state law, all the revenues that come in for the building positions, for the building office, have got to be used towards the building department. So this would be something that, according to state law, we are fulfilling our obligation by adding, which we need, another building inspector and another permit technician. And again, that is something that we have to do per state law, is put our monies towards that department. The fire inspector ISO officer, that would be paid for out of the fire tax. That is not part of the general taxes. Recreation assistant, park and rec is something, our current director is kind of a one-person show, and it's kind of a thought that we should be doing something with that department, adding a person. 2 full-time paramedics. Right now, we have no paramedics. We only have the EMS service, but not with paramedics. So we feel very strongly this is something that would help not only our residents, but our visitors if there's an emergency. Plus any revenues that we get in from that, we feel strongly, I know the chief does, that it would cover the costs of those positions. Public services, in fact, somebody brought it up tonight under public comment about streets, and we felt the addition of 2 laborers and 1 promotion as a supervisor would allow us to do streets and get out there and use that Powell bill money to do a lot better with the way we're keeping the condition of our streets. And then community building, which is this one, we now have a part-time administrator, and we'd like to get that up to a full-time building administrator. That also would be able to bring in more revenues, as well as there's been such a request to have all these different boards and committees meetings televised that we need another body to help, because right now we just don't have enough staff to be doing planning meetings and all the workshops and all of that. So they would be doing the same thing. And then there was a request, Park and Rec actually had requested 2 members from Public Services go over to their department, but instead of 2, I'm recommending 1 go over. It's always, every town I've ever worked with does it differently. Sometimes it's all with Public Services, and sometimes the Park and Rec gets their own staff. And then with Development Services, there's a request for an additional code enforcement officer, especially if the board decides to move forward with the right-of-way ordinance being enforced. And then lastly, I think everybody realizes we now have a historic district, so it's Development Services was requesting a downtown historic district person in order to enforce the historical ordinance. So this is, as I said at the workshop, this is when everybody gets their calculator out and goes, okay, what's this gonna cost me? So here's some examples. So if your old assessed value was $250,000, your current taxes were $989. If your new assessed value, again based on a 44% average, is now around $360,000, then the new taxes, based on my proposal, would be $1,024.92, so a difference of $35.92. We go to another valued home, old value is $450,000, current tax is $1,780.20, new assessed value would now be $648,000. Your new taxes now would be $1,844.86, a difference of $64.66. And then lastly, the old assessed value, if it was at $750,000, current tax is $2,967. Your new assessed value is $1,080,000, new taxes $3,074.76, and that's a difference of $107.76. So how do you get involved? We need your input. Every time I've done one of these presentations, we have got to hear from the public, whether it is through emails, phone calls, whatever, calling me, emailing me, letting the board know. They want to hear that. What is it that you're looking for out of this budget for this upcoming year? I always say this, and nobody ever ends up doing this, but if you want a certain program, what program should we eliminate so that the tax levels out? And usually somebody will come up and say they want X, Y, Z, but they never tell me. Okay, then what are we going to eliminate in order to fulfill that? But it is something, if you think about it, if you come up here, if you could try to address that, that would be helpful. Voice your concerns, tell us what you like about the budget, and again, what you don't like. The public hearing, I believe, is going to be at the first regular meeting in June, which is the 8th, here at 6 o'clock. So you can put that date in your calendar. This is a key number. For every $142,444 the board adds or deletes, then it goes up 1 cent or down 1 cent, depending on what direction they go in. So again, public input, I can't tell you how important this is. So the only solutions that I've seen for lower taxes, and I did miss one, you're either going to have to decrease the level of services, lobby state legislators for local option taxes, because in this state there are not quite as many as other states. You have to find ways to increase the dollars, excuse me, raised from visitors, because they certainly impact our capital. And the last one I meant to put on, I forgot, is regionalization. I've started meeting with the other area city managers. Let's start working together. Why are we going to duplicate something that, you know, if you just go a certain, distance away, you could get the service. But if we all regionalize it, then we can all share in the cost of those and not just every town have something. So anyways, I want to thank Melanie Truxler, Brandon Stevens, Dory Dutton. Department heads did an awesome job. I was very proud of them for putting it together. And we all look forward to working with all of you to be here to answer questions. And thank you very much.
Bonnie, can I ask a question? I thought that we had, I must be confused. I thought we set the public hearing for June 6th.
That's why I was looking, was it the 6th?
Yes, June
Okay.
6th. The board
Sorry.
meeting is June 8th. The public hearing is June 6th.
Sorry.
No problem.
Too many meetings you guys put me through, that's why.
Bonnie, one other thing. Just for the public's edification, if they don't know, can you say what the Powell bill is? We're talking about maybe the money from the Powell bill will pay for this and that, but I'm wondering if everybody actually knows what that is.
The Powell bill money comes in from the state that's to be used for roads or like to buy the dump truck. It's going to help also if there is additional paving staff, that when they pave, we could use that money to actually help pay for those people that would help us with that. But it really is at least is some state money that comes in to help with all the roads, but it's 100% just for roads.
It's from your gas tax, from that, and it was a bill from 1951, and the senator was, his last name was Powell, and it's when the legislature was quite good at listening to the League of Municipalities. They lobbied to have this bill, and it didn't take away any local authority or anything like that. It was something pure, a pure bill that helped municipalities. So we love the Powell bill and the Powell bill money. So any other questions for the city manager? Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you very much. So we have item 2 and Tom Stanley, the recommendation of a contractor for dangerous trees and hanging limbs, and also you will also do item 3, recommendation of a contractor for vegetative debris removal, and this is related to storms, hurricanes, that type thing. So, Mr. Stanley.
Good evening. I don't have any fancy PowerPoint shows tonight. Sorry for the disappointment. No, every 2 years we go out for bids with the help of Johnson Environmental Services, Barry Johnson, for our hurricane debris pickup. And this year is time for the new bids, the new contract for 23, 24, and 25 hurricane season. I don't have to go into any history really because everybody knows what hurricanes do to this area, be it flooding, debris, trees, leaves, whatever. So the first one is for our dangerous trees and hanging limbs removal. And that's exactly what it says. Hanging limbs are what I like to call widowmakers. Those are what's left in the air, broke off, hanging down, ready to kill somebody when they fall. And dangerous trees could be leaners or some that are falling over. I didn't put together any numbers you guys have in front of you because with this one there's so many numbers because it's the size of the tree, diameter, the size of the stump, but you guys have it in front of you. But the low bid on this, there were 5 bidders. The low bid on this was State Tree Services for the primary contractor, and the secondary contractor for some reason State Tree Services could not come would be DRC Emergency Services. The State Tree, they do a lot of work for Southport, and as far as they're always really good competitive bidders. So if there's any questions, it's kind of, really kind of self-explanatory for this because we've all been through it.
We got a lot of complaints a couple of years ago after the last hurricane about debris pickup. Are either of these bidders the same ones that we used then?
I believe it was State Tree, yes. What type of complaints?
A month after the hurricane, stuff still not picked up.
Well, I will say this. I don't know who complained or where they come from, but I will say that, and this may not be the case, but these contractors it's publicized. We let them know. They typically make a pass and then come back in and make a second pass. I do know that people will continue to take their debris out to the road regardless whether it's over or not. Are there instances where some stuff may be left behind? Absolutely. We recognize that. We get that every time our trash trucks or debris trucks go by. We just have to maybe have a little better checks and balances. But it does happen, yes.
Yeah, I actually thought the pickup after ECIS was pretty quick. It was a lot quicker than we had experienced previously. You know, we have to have a little bit of patience in a situation like that. We're not going to clear it up overnight.
And I will say that, you know, a lot of times I do recall of one sitting here, you know, everything does come back if I talk about it long enough. Some of the complaints, I know 2 complaints were from a resident on Clarendon Avenue, but what happens is when the homeowners take the debris out to the roadside, they have a responsibility to place it in a location that is easy for the contractors to pick up. These contractors come in with these big grappling trucks. If you put your debris under a tree limb, guess what's going to happen? That grappling truck is not going to be able to do it. So with that, a lot of times they do have a little small skid steer that comes and pushes it back. But I do know of one instance, that may be it, that may be not, but I do know it also has to be placed somewhere convenient for the grapple trucks to be able to get.
Tom, I've also had some complaints, but you're going to get complaints about every day. I'm just going to take the opportunity to say that what I found in Southport to be really neat, and they don't do it in all the other places I've lived, is the public services goes out with a backhoe and they clear the path of the trees in the roadway. They don't wait for somebody to cut them up in little pieces. You came down, you had our whole neighborhood, which had a lot of trees down, and by 9:15 the next morning, you could drive down the streets. The trees are all over the place on the side, in the right-of-way, but you could get out of your house and you could go wherever you needed to go. And I thought that was a great service.
Yeah, what myself and my guys do is as soon as it's safe, and sometimes when it's not, we're out there making sure that the roads are clear immediately. For instance, the last hurricane, what was it, Ian? I was out here at 3:30 in the morning going ahead and pushing roads clear. Our main goal, obviously, is to make sure the main roads to the hospitals are clear. But that's what we do. We do the initial push. Our job is to do the initial push, and the contractors are the ones who come and pick it up, stage it, grind it, and haul it off and stuff like that.
We need what do we need? A
So
motion?
if you give me a second, yeah, that'd be great. What we need is a motion for State Tree Service Incorporated as the city's primary dangerous trees and hanging limbs removal and disposal contractor, and then have Emergency Services LLC as the secondary.
So moved.
Okay, Alderman Lombardi, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Alt. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? Right, and that motion carried. Thank you. And Mr. Stanley, we have the recommendation for vegetative debris, construction and demolition debris collection and disposal.
Again, to mimic some of my verbiage from the previous conversation, every 2 years, this contract is for after myself and my guys go out and do the initial push. The last one was for the hangers and leaning trees. This one is for where they actually come and pick the debris up, which Ms. Lowe, which you were referring to. These guys come, once it's piled to the side of the road, they pick it up, they haul it off to our staging site, be it Ninth Street or Sunny Point or whatever other designated permitted site we have. And then they grind it there and haul it off. The low bid on that, again, was State Tree Contractors. And the second low bid on that, or the next bid on that, was KDF Enterprises.
I'd like to make a motion to accept this.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Alderman Carroll. Thank you. Any further discussion on the debris removal? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stanley. Item 4, selection of audit firm, City Manager Theron.
Yes. The contract with our current auditor was up, so we went out for a request for qualifications. We received 3 different firms that wanted to work with us on the audit. They were all very, very good, and we did an interview with the finance director, the deputy finance director, myself, and I would highly recommend to the board Sharp Patel CPA. This would be a new firm that will come in and do the audit for the city. In fact, they need to start probably fairly quickly. But I think the most important thing with this firm is they're willing to come in and do a training session with the board to understand what the audit is, because it's not easy, and how it works and how you put it together an audit and the right questions to ask. So I was very impressed with them. And they're a great price.
Any questions for the city manager on the selection of the audit firm? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to...
I make a motion to hire the auditing firm of Sharp Patel to perform our audits for 3 years at a cost of $34,037 in year one, $35,050, what is that, $8 in year two, and $36,110 for year three.
Second.
Okay, and Alderman Allen with the motion and Ms. Lombardi with the second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 5, off-duty management for police, fire, EMS departments. This is when our police are off-duty and that we have a need for their services, and this is how they get scheduled and get paid. So this would be something different.
Yes, when I was talking to both of the chiefs, fire and police, it came to my attention that with private duty currently, the way that it had been working is the vendor would pay the employee directly the day of the service. So there were no taxes taken out or anything. I went, whoa, 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 we cannot be doing that. It has to be done in a different manner. So we did some research through finance department on how are we going to handle this, and lo and behold, we found a company that I never had to work with one, but what a great idea. Start investing. No, I'm only kidding. But off-duty management, not only do they pay the, actually, let me back up. What they do is they will get the call from the private vendor. They will arrange for whoever can do that for police or fire. They will make sure there's a contract in place to get that done. And then they will do the payment to the employee with benefits and everything and take care of the whole thing. And it's what an asset, absolute asset to have them. So I would like to recommend not just the hiring of off-duty management to handle all of this, but also to agree to the rates that we're recommending, which would be $40 an hour for police or fire, $45 on a holiday per hour, and then $21.50 per vehicle if they are needed. So with that, I mean, ask the board. We have Shelley Salser here from off-duty, and she can answer questions about the company and what they do. And we are, the chiefs and I are highly recommending that we go forward.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the rates of pay for personnel and equipment, contract with off-duty management for managing the extra-duty police, fire, and EMS services, and approve the resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the contract as presented. And just to let you know, we're glad you're here.
Mayor Pro Tem, and a second by Alderman Carroll. Any further discussion on this excellent program?
Yeah, I'd like to just voice my concern that this was originally presented with two different cost factors, one for 501c3s and one for everybody else. I don't want to get into the merits of all the other great causes that we have given money to, but this time we took it and the real driver, reason why we're sitting here, is because of the churches in this town have all asked for this to happen. Now, it'll dovetail into other things, but that was the reason why we're here. Because I've had multiple discussions with the police department on this for a long time. So I still think there should be a reduced price for the 501c3s that are asking to have this done to match what was originally proffered to us.
I disagree about that. and I'd be the last one to say something bad about the churches, but, I mean, the work's the work. The officers are going to be doing the same work, so I don't think it's fair to them to require them to take less money for working for a church or some other nonprofit.
Good point, sir, on both sides. In fact, the woman of the cloth says, charge them more. I guess we have to, I don't have any choice unless someone would like to amend the motion.
Well, my concern once again is we give money, and I'm not saying the money that we give away is bad. What I'm saying is we have occupied tens of millions of dollars worth of buildings for 501c3s for $1 a year. We have done all kinds of things, all worthy causes. And the church has asked to have this ability to have this, and it was drawn up one way, and we decided to change it. Now, I know where the vote's going to go on this, so it's going to pass. But I want to voice my concern that that was the issue.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Did not pass unanimously, 5-1. Thank you. And please be safe out there. And thank you. Item 6, Oakton preliminary plat, and I'll call on our city attorney, Brady Herman.
Yeah, before we get to the next two agenda items, and I turn it over to Travis and the applicant, just for the benefit of the public and this board, just want to go over the standard for preliminary plat decisions. This decision from this board is an administrative decision, which means this board needs to decide based upon the objective standards and criteria in the UDO, whether the preliminary plat meets those standards. So it's a yes or no. Either the preliminary plat meets the standards of the ordinance, then you should approve, and if it doesn't, you should deny. But if that's the case, then you should go and state which sections of the ordinance and explain why the plat did not meet those standards. So I'll go and turn it over to the applicant, or Travis, or Mr. Mayor. Do you want to?
Yeah, Travis or Mo?
Or sorry,
Ms.
excuse
Mo?
me, Mo.
Okay, Mo. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mayor and Alderman. Greg Wayne for Stanley Martin Homes is seeking approval for a major subdivision preliminary plat, known now as Oakton. So this approval would authorize construction of the required improvements to the site. So this is an approximately 20-acre site between Stewart and Photo Avenues and adjacent to the Hammocks subdivision. It is zoned R10, which requires a minimum 10,000 square foot lot with a 75-foot width. Setbacks and height will be confirmed at the permit stage. It has, of the 20 acres, they're doing about almost 3 acres of open space with walking trails around the stormwater pond, and that exceeds the 2% open space for a standard subdivision. So this is their proposed 42-lot single-family subdivision, and per section 4.0 of the UDO, it requires interconnectivities to the streets, and this one does connect with Sand Dollar Lane with the Hammocks. As you know, there are two entrances on Photo Avenue and a one-way entrance off of Stewart Avenue, and they have a 60-foot right-of-way that will be dedicated to the city. At the planning board level, the planning board has composed a committee, and at the committee meetings there were concerns from the neighbors of the entrance from Stewart as a two-way, and so it was requested that the entrance become a trail or a bike or walking path only, or a consideration of a one-way only. And after considerations, the applicant was willing to do a one-way off of Stewart Avenue and reduce it to a one-way street with the signage added on there so that people know that it definitely is a one-way street, and they reduced the street size. There were some questions about the landscape plan and the tree mitigation. This application is using what is called permit choice. It's an option in our UDO, and it's also in 160D of the planning enabling statutes that allows an applicant that when they apply, they can, and then the rules change, they are able to choose which rules they want to use for their application. So this application was originally brought in July of 21. So they are only allowed, they're required to mitigate only the regulated trees or specimen, in the setbacks only, or specimen trees anywhere on site. Specimen trees are anything over 30 inches. And then in September 22, there was a change to the tree ordinance that allowed a, what there is called a infrastructure, drainage, and utility provision, which would allow the subdivision to remove the trees without mitigation except for live oak trees that are 8 inches or greater. So they are using that for their right-of-way. And I was also asked to talk about the trees the counts of the trees in some of these zones. So first and foremost, I'd like to say that they are retaining 290 trees on site, which equals 3,695 inches of diameters. There are 257 trees that are being removed from the grading and drainage section that does not require mitigation, and that would be 3,262 inches, or 66, I'm sorry, inches of diameter. And in there are 3 live oaks, which equal 58 inches, so they have to mitigate that 1 for 1, and they have provided that on their on this site. They have 12 of live oaks added. And then they are removing 215 trees that would require a 1 for 1 mitigation, which that would be a 2,912 inches of mitigation that they have, and they are proposing 2,935 inches. So they're going a little bit over their required mitigation. So that is, and this plan, as it is, there is some mitigation that is not shown on this because it will be taken care of after homes are built, because they can't plant the trees where they need to, where they're reciting the homes. The next lot of questions were over the drainage and stormwater retention. They do have a stormwater pond system and all of the water will be designed and engineered to drain into that pond, and they are designing it to meet the 100-year, 24-hour event. And the final design will be reviewed and approved by the city engineers and the Public Services Department prior to any work starting on site. The Planning Board at their March 16th meeting made a unanimous recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for approval of this major subdivision preliminary plat. It meets the requirements of the UDO and is eligible to be approved. The applicant is here. I'd like to invite them up for you to ask any questions if they would like to present anything.
Make sure your microphone's on. Welcome. State your name and board. Any questions?
Yeah.
Thank you, mayors and members of the board. My name is Worth Mills with Longleaf Law Partners. Do you need my address for the record? No. Here on behalf of Stanley Martin, the subdivision applicant, I appreciate the explanation from the town attorney and the planning department. I'll make my remarks very brief. State law requires that subdivision plat decisions are based on the clear, explicit standards that are set forward in the UDO. And in Southport's UDO, that standard is compliance with the UDO. I think the planning department did a great job of explaining where we are compliant and where we actually exceed the minimum standards of the UDO. Again, we appreciate the opportunity. I know that Stanley Martin looks forward to being a part of this community. And again, I appreciate your time and consideration this evening. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have some questions. If
Yes, please.
yeah, do you want to go?
Would you like to go first? Either one.
Huh? Okay. Hey there. And I'm not sure if you're here for statutory reasons or what, but one of the just some things I wanted to point out is at the entrance, there's a lot of trees different. I copied out the different areas, like where the kiosk is. There's a whole list of trees there, and you're just putting a kiosk there. It would seem to me that those trees could remain in that spot. That's like a half a dozen trees, and they're along the property line, the property edges of that kiosk. So it would seem to me that they could be able to retain those trees, because it's like 15-inch pine, a 14-inch pine, 2 13 and 2 12-inch pines. So it's a lot, and you're keeping that as open space anyway with just a kiosk on it for the mail.
Again, I would have to defer to your staff who knows this code much better than I as to whether our tree and landscaping plan is compliant with the UDO.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, the other thing I just want to say too is that with the entrance, there are trees all along that property line. By just moving the water line, it looks to me like that y'all are taking those trees because of the placement of the water line. Everywhere else on this subdivision, you have the water line right against where the sidewalk is. So that water line could be moved over, and then those trees retained there.
Yes, ma'am, and again, I'm going to have to defer to your staff who are much more expert on this matter than I am and have deemed that this plan is consistent and compliant with your development ordinance.
Is your client here?
He is, yes.
Okay. He doesn't want to speak?
They've asked me to
Okay.
speak on their behalf.
Is there a legal requirement for the entrance on Stewart?
I would defer to your staff.
Oh, gosh, no, you shouldn't do this.
There is not a legal requirement to have the entrance off of Stewart Avenue.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this question. I know you don't know the answer, but what are you attempting to accomplish with that entrance?
Yes, sir. I think the fire marshal, fire chief spoke to the benefits of having that access onto Stewart at the May 5th workshop.
Yeah, he did. He said that seconds matter, and I on a street that, and I sincerely appreciate him, and I know that Stewart is a heavily trafficked street. It already has more than it can take. Our fire and EMS are not going to take Stewart to get to this subdivision. And this is an entrance, not an exit. So getting out of Stewart is not going to be a possibility. So I appreciate the comments. I think it's unneeded. My recommendation is that this board do the right thing for Southport. I'm going to ask y'all to do that. I would ask that the developer eliminate the access off of Stewart. I would encourage them to make that a pedestrian corridor, keeping with, the idea of connectivity. Also allows us to save a significant number of trees and to also minimize the overall impact on the trees. So that's where I am.
I wonder if the fire chief can speak to whether he actually thinks that this is a necessary there's certain, it'd be nice to have a fourth exit and entrance there on Stewart for emergency purposes, but is it necessary? I mean, I'm thinking in terms of point of origin for emergency vehicles is going to be the fire station. And so the trucks would be going past those accesses to, past the Fodale accesses into the subdivision and going all the way up another block and turning and then coming back in. So this does not seem to me to be an absolutely essential emergency access.
What's your specific question?
You caught me. Is this a necessary, essential access or exit?
Can you pull the plan back up? Can somebody?
Yes. Let me get the big one.
All right, so of course everybody knows and realizes that the fire station faces Fodale Avenue. So I do agree with Alderman Carroll's assumption. If we're at the fire station and we're responding to Oakton subdivision, I'm sure we're going to respond up Fodale Avenue. There are going to be times that we're not going to be at the fire station and have emergency calls. I could what if this to death tonight. However, if this entrance is here off of Stewart Avenue and somebody in this house right here calls, it is going to be quicker for us to get to this house if we're in this vicinity because of this entrance, rather than have to respond all the way to Fodale and come all the way through the subdivision. Is it a necessary entrance or exit? I think it's going to help with interconnectivity. That's what I said at the March 5th board workshop. I think seconds matter. I'll still stand on that seconds matter. I don't know if those folks are going to need us. I can't really speak to what's going to happen in the future. I can say we're probably more than likely going to respond from the fire station on Fodale Avenue. That's directly out, straight shot out of the fire station. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That lot that you pointed at, I don't know if you've had a chance to really look at this latest map or plat. That's not in the subdivision.
That lot's not in the subdivision? Okay, this lot, that lot.
The lots on both sides of that access
9 and 4.
street are not,
Okay.
not in. Would you be satisfied if this were just an emergency access with an emergency gate activated by your codes and not available to general public?
Certainly.
But available to pedestrians, bicyclists, dog walkers, and so on, but not in use by the general public and only by you all if you needed to be there?
Yes.
Would you be satisfied if that entrance didn't exist?
Considering that there's still an entrance into the next subdivision, which will be interconnected off of Stewart. So it's not like you're losing any access from Stewart.
You're still going to have 3 other access points. I mean, I don't really know what the purpose was to put the entrance there, but you know, when we went through the technical review committee and all of that, it was there and it flows. It makes sense. I mean,
I guess what doesn't make sense from that perspective, absolutely it makes sense. I appreciate that. But we have to take into consideration the rest of Southport. It's not just safety, it's our trees, it's all the things that we say very clearly matter to us.
I understand
and,
that, yes, sir.
You know,
and I agree with you, and I live in Southport, and I'm from Southport, but I'm here tonight as a safety aspect. I'm not here about trees.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate that. And I am here. I'm here for safety and trees.
Right.
And the safety of the trees.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah.
And I love trees, everybody. If you come by my house, that's the reason I bought my house on Park Avenue, because it has 6 live oaks in the front yard, and that's why I'm there. So I love trees.
Maybe we should have done Oakton first.
Well, can I repeat my question to you? I'm not sure, I don't mean to pin you down, but I actually do mean to, which is this access off of Stewart essential for public safety, given that we have 3 other accesses?
I'm going to ask the police chief to join me up here tonight, and we can ask his opinion too. I'm going to say, with my original statement, seconds matter, and it does assist and help people to get, or help the emergency crews to get to that side of the subdivision quicker.
Mr. Mayor, when I
Yes,
get a
Alderman.
chance.
Please, absolutely.
Counselor, I'm going to, oh, Chief, are you going to speak? I didn't think I would. I'm going to give you the opportunity because I'm going to like start talking and you can go back to your chair. Unless Lo wants you. Yeah. No. Counselor, I understood what your advice to us was. And we asked another question, and I'm only saying this for clarity for the audience because it was raised to us. There's 2 entrances from this development into the hammocks. The road, right, one entrance? Okay, there's one entrance into the hammocks. And Travis, tell me if I go astray here. The roads of the hammocks are not city streets. They've never been accepted since the final plat was signed off in 2016. If you've been following this type of thing, this behavior pattern in past boards in Southport, we would sign off for things and the developer would beat feet out of town and the roads are never fixed. So my concern was, did we have the authority to connect this development into the hammocks on a road that is private, and we have, after 7 years, it's never been fixed. Did we have any liability or any issues with connecting it and putting more cars on it that the city has done? And your answer to me was?
After discussing with staff, was they can.
And because of that, because they can, I'm obligated to vote, unless there's some other issue, I'm obligated to vote in favor of this. It seems to me.
This is your decision.
Well, it seems to.
Alderman, so it's the standard is whether it meets the standards of the ordinance.
Well, if you say we can do this, I'm following the dot that says that we can do this, and then we have to do this, and that's what my point is that I bring this all up only because citizens, specifically from the hammocks, asked about it, since the HOA didn't opine on this either, and we're going to do this. As long as we're doing it legally, then I guess we're meeting all the requirements of the UDO. And I just want to make sure the public knows we didn't just gloss over the issue.
You can vote no and feel good about it. It's okay to do that.
I'd like to ask the city engineer a couple of questions about drainage, stormwater drainage. Or are you all satisfied with what you know? Okay.
You should
Hey, Tom.
ask, anyone can ask any questions about this project.
Okay, my question is this. Are you satisfied from an engineering standpoint that this subdivision has been planned and the drainage has been taken care of adequately so that there is no flooding and that there will not be flooding problems for the hammocks further down?
What has been reviewed and submitted is not a fully engineered plan. The applicant has proposed a detention basin that will handle the storms as required under the UDO and the DEQ regulations. I cannot guarantee that
any detention basin will work in any storm because they're designed for 100-year storms. You can get a 500-year storm. You can get a 1,000-year storm. You could get repeated 10-year storms that add up, and it can't handle it. So I cannot guarantee any drainage system will work all the time and never flood. I can't guarantee that it won't get clogged somewhere and not flood. You know, the plan that was submitted has a detention basin designed to handle the flow that it is creating. But the full system has not fully been designed yet, and that's what, once the plat is reviewed, we will ensure that the system works in conjunction with the detention basin as designed.
Could you talk, do you have experience as it relates to the hammocks and their engineered stormwater plan?
I've been on board for 3 months now, so no,
so you didn't review that?
No, I did not.
Did you? No, not enough. So after that subdivision went in, it was pretty devastating to everything around it, and they had designed things that were supposed to work as well. So I don't know that, yeah, I'm struggling with that too.
I can't speak for...
Do we know where the overflow is for the retention pond? Where does it go to? I don't particularly care where on the map it is. I just want to know, it has to go somewhere.
It goes out to Stewart Ave.
The overflow is Stewart Avenue.
I believe so, yes.
Really?
Which is nice and low right there. I mean, that is the low point.
Are there houses anywhere near that? I mean, when we did the hammocks, the city, not necessarily this board, but when we did the hammocks, and Travis and I have talked about this, they had to lay the underground cabling on the ground and then build it up because you couldn't dig because you're at the water table. When I sat through one of the workshops on this development, they were going to do the same thing, and that artificially tipped the land the wrong way. And so one thing is the landing got flooded, and the other is it exasperated the flooding on Stewart, I believe, either that or Fodell. And my concern was when they raised the land to do it again, the same process, because they had the same issue, are you at least sure it's going to the drainage pond?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In addition, I just want to add one thing. The drainage pond is not fully designed with a spillway and that kind of thing. Also, that comes after the final plat, after the preliminary plat is approved, that design will come in. So, you know, right now, it does not show a spillway within there. That would all be part of it. I'm going to assume it's going to go to Stewart Ave just based on its location and there being a swale on Stewart Ave already.
So my limited, my understanding is minuscule compared to yours. Almost everything on the west side of town is diverted into Cottage Creek. Some things are on this side of the town are diverted into Bonnets Creek or Price's Creek. And this one is not. And is that also typical that if there's no creek nearby, we just dump it onto a street? And have we looked at the street to say if we dumped water, it filled up and it dumped because we have to make that provision that it's going to dump it. Does the street have to be modified to be able to accommodate the water? Is there a requirement to do that?
That would all be part of the engineering design of that stormwater system, which has not been fully accomplished yet. And so that is something that would be reviewed at that point in time.
And if that was the case, would the developer might have to throw money into Stewart Street to ensure that the water goes someplace?
That would be a possibility, yes.
Okay, all right.
Is that correct? Would the developer be responsible for taking care of drainage problems that this might create on Stewart, or would the city be responsible for that?
That I would have to defer to staff or look into that. I just don't want to give the board bad advice, but I don't want to put Travis on the spot either.
my understanding would be that if it's directly related to impacts related to the project, as determined through the engineering review, which would happen after the plat received approval tonight, yes, it would be on the responsibility of the applicant to make those improvements. The same way it would be if, in the case of a traffic impact study, they were required to construct a turn lane. That is their responsibility to construct and their responsibility to pay for, not the city's.
For Tom, engineer, would a larger retention pond help with the problems with drainage?
It's all part of the overall plan with, you know, it's possible it could make it worse. We have to see the design plan before we can make those calls. Just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's going to work better.
I had a question. So I just want to make sure they can cherry pick permit choice ordinance, even though we made the change for the utility road stuff in conjunction with an expanded tree ordinance. Yes, it's going to be the answer.
Brady, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, you can go through individual sections, even if it's the same section of the ordinance. And take, for example, the tree ordinance, which has been amended multiple times. The way permit choice works is that they could pick, 318A from the 2019 ordinance. This is just hypothetical. 318A from the 2019 ordinance, 319B from 2022, 319C from 2021. And it can even get more minute than that if they so chose to do that. Now, choosing to do that it's difficult for staff, but it's also difficult for the engineers to piece all of it together as well. So there's some element of logic that comes into the ability to do that. But under permit choice, yes, they can do that.
How has it come to pass that we allow permit choice?
The state mandates it. The state of North Carolina mandates it.
And the planning board has recommended approval.
Yes.
I have one question for the developer's representative. Just one question, very simple and straightforward one. Will the developer, in light of what has been discussed here tonight and the desire of what I believe to be a majority of the board, and as well as the desire of a lot of our citizens, to eliminate the one-way turn in from Stewart, will the developer consider doing that?
Respectfully, sir, no. Again, our job has been accomplished through the technical review committee and the work that your staff has put in to review this plan to make sure that it meets all of your criteria, and it does. And so really the onus is on you. If there is a problem that you can point to a specific UDO section, please let us know, and we are committed to working with your city staff to remedy that. But otherwise, I don't have that much more to offer. Thank you.
So that's a no?
So your opening, I believe in your opening statement, you said something about wishing to, what'd you say, be a good citizen and good neighbor and look forward to working and being part of the community. Is that right? Is that what you said, basically?
That's correct. And
okay.
I think part of that is making sure that our plan is compliant with the objective standards set forward in your development ordinance.
Yeah. I would submit that it goes a bit beyond that, but thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the major subdivision preliminary plat known as Oakton.
Second.
I'd like to hear from our attorney about the advisability of that.
Of denying the project?
Yeah.
everything that staff has said in terms of, in their opinion, working through the project, as well as the planning board and the technical review committee, I'm going to go and defer to their judgment when they say that this plat meets the ordinance. And it's an administrative decision, so it's black and white. If it does, then you should approve.
Right. And if we don't, then we open ourselves up to a court challenge, correct? Which we would almost certainly lose, and which would require us to obviously not only pay our legal fees, but pay the defendant's legal fees as well, correct?
That's a possibility, yes.
I have a question for our attorney. Is consideration of the, whether the project is a benefit to the general welfare, health, safety, and welfare of the larger community, and in conformity with the mission and purpose of the Camel Land Use Plan, is that not a basis for us to consider rejecting this in hopes that the developer will come back with something better for the community?
Unless planning staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that is a standard in the subdivision ordinance or the other requirements they have to meet in the UDO.
Those items that Alderman Davis would have been referenced in the adoption of the UDO itself. Now that the UDO has been adopted, in a project like this, a by right project, so to speak, the only specific regulations that are listed within the UDO are available for consideration.
Not the underlying purpose of the regulations in the UDO?
The regulations would be drawn from those purpose statements, but the purpose statement itself would not be considered a regulation.
To summarize a question to you, are you saying that we have no choice other than to vote yes? If that's so, I wonder why we're voting.
Because this still goes in front of you all as essentially, you guys are the final decision maker to make sure that all of those TRC, planning board, as well as staff has gone through that process to make, with the applicant, to make sure that the plan that's presented to you tonight meets the standards of the ordinance. And so you all are essentially reviewing that and making your decision. But it is one of those where administrative decisions do not involve any sort of discretion.
I appreciate that the efforts of the planning board, and this is in no way, I believe in what they do. I know that they have an obligation to approve this based on their standards, and they can't put the city of Southport in the position that we can put the city of Southport. But I think at some point we've got to stand up and say this is the right thing for this place we call home. We're not a developer. We're not coming in and building homes and leaving. So
So the reason for your opposition is the entrance on Stewart Avenue. Is that the main, or are there other things in the opposition?
certainly the entrance off of Stewart is not needed. Stewart has way too much traffic on it as it is. So I'd like to see that eliminated, and I'd like to see, some care for the trees, some willingness to preserve what's already there.
Let's not forget we have that petition too from concerned citizens.
So what if you amended your motion to, not that I'm trying to get it passed, but I mean, if that's your major issue, then what if you had a motion that stated that you wanted the entrance on Stewart to be removed from the plan, otherwise accepting the plat as reviewed by the planning board and the technical review committee and as presented? I'm not saying you have to, I'm just trying to.
What are your thoughts on that, Brady? or Travis?
I would think that the applicant would have to consent to that. Or if they don't, that would otherwise be a denial, but I think that we need to be clear on the record of how that would play out.
Well, and certainly, as the UDO states, any motion to deny should cite specific reasons why. And the addition of any condition, whether it's a by right project or a quasi-judicial project or a legislative project, any condition is null and void if both the city and the applicant don't agree to it. So,
Another question for you. Could we, without violating law, move to table this to have the staff work further with the developer to try to achieve resolution to some of these concerns? We have that option without.
I suppose you do. I don't know if that's something that the applicant would want, but I also probably think the applicant doesn't want to get it denied either. But by law, I don't see an issue with that.
Do you want to amend?
I'll amend my motion to reflect that.
Second. Before you do that, I think it would make sense to ask the applicant if he's even willing to do that. I think the answer was no.
No, he's not. He's trying to be a good neighbor.
Well, no, what I'm saying, is if the answer is no, then what are you tabling it for? If you're going to vote no, vote no.
Yeah, I mean, I have to reluctantly agree. I don't see the point in tabling it. It's pretty clear. They've made it clear they have no intention of doing the right thing, so I don't know that we have much choice.
And staff has been through this for several months now, right?
it's been several months, and this case has existed for almost 2 years. Yes, we've been through it. We would not have made the recommendation to the planning board to approve it if we did not feel it met every applicable standard of the UDO.
We asked the representative of the applicant one more time, would you be willing to go back, look at this, and come back next month with making that entrance off of Stewart an emergency entrance only?
Yes, ma'am. We can review that with staff and come back in June, and I believe you have the right to defer this at least one more time. So that is your right to do that, and in that time we can continue to evaluate that with staff.
Yeah,
I have a motion on the table to table.
Yeah, I want to be clear that my intention is not that that's an emergency entrance. I don't see that as part of the idea of making that a pedestrian corridor for connectivity is bikes and people, so, and that's going to help preserve the trees that exist there. It's going to be more in keeping with everything else that's there in that neighborhood. So I don't think that it's necessary. I think we might have gotten that answer, that it's not a necessary entrance. So I would like to see that turned into a pedestrian corridor. And so therefore, I'll make a motion to table this, send it back to staff, let them work alongside the developer to hopefully accomplish what it is that we can approve.
Okay, we have a motion to table this. The staff can look at the entrance issue off of Stewart, and there's a second. Any further discussion?
Brady, so this is a legal action. This motion would be a legal action as opposed to illegal.
Yes.
Any other questions for the attorney or any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously, so we'll go back to city staff. Thank you. Yes, I was looking at the clock. We've been here a good bit of time. So, yes, let's take a 10-minute break. Thank you. Golly, they just... All righty, we can get back in our seats and try to get started. It's almost 9 o'clock. Oh, no, thank you, Reverend Alderman Davis. All right, so we have next, item 7, Historic Prices Creek, Townhouses Preliminary Plat. Ms. Meehan, thank you.
Good evening again. So Cameron Smith is the applicant and owner is requesting approval of Phase 2 of the Prices Creek Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat. This is a zoned plan unit development, and it was approved in 2004 for 3 phases. The first phase, as you know, is the cottages. They're the single-family home portion of the development, and then there were 2 other multifamily phases, and this is the second phase with the multifamily. It is located off of Rob Gandy Boulevard and also East Leonard Street. It has connectivity with Green Meadow Way onto East Leonard. So this is their preliminary plat. It is 48 units or townhomes. It is a little over 17 acres with almost 4 acres of open space, which exceeds the 20% required. They have 40-foot right-of-way that will have 24 feet, I apologize, dedicated public streets that will, with space for sidewalks. And this was specifically permitted by the fire marshal and the fire chief, which is allowed by our UDO. Also, they have met their landscape and mitigations, and there are no buffer requirements, but they are putting a lot of their mitigation along the top near Rob Gandy because it is the property across the street is light industrial. This is also of note, this is a low-density stormwater project, so they will not have a stormwater retention pond. It is designed to be less than 24% impervious surfaces and is permitted through the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. The city engineers will work with DEQ with the final plans prior to installation for compliance with the city standards. The system that they will be using is a system of vegetated swales and curb outlets that will disperse the flow. So it's going to help protect the stream hydrology, remove pollutants, and then prevent erosion through infiltration. At the planning board, at their regularly scheduled meeting on April 20th, they recommended a unanimous approval for recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for the major subdivision plat. So it meets the requirements of the UDO and is eligible for to be approved as a major subdivision preliminary plat. Cameron Smith is here tonight if you have any questions for him, or I can help answer any questions as well.
Any questions for Mr. Smith or Ms. Meehan? Okay, entertain a motion.
I just have one. Cam, will you put an entrance onto Stewart, please?
You know, I was not going to say anything like that, but you go ahead.
I do have a technical question. Where these swells are, where the water is supposed to be absorbed, do we know how far away the water table is from the bottom of the swell? In other words, will the water go away? I live in an area that had the same idea, and the water's never gone away for 37 years. So I'm just trying to figure out, is the water, do we know the distance between one and the other?
Okay, please come up to the mic. Thanks, Cameron.
I can tell you the property overall is very sandy. It's a good elevation, and as far as the stormwater swales, I don't have the answer to where the groundwater would be, where the swales are. Obviously, the swales are going to start up and work their way down the hill because it's a high elevation. So I don't.
Is this the same as phase one?
Same.
Isn't this a second phase of something?
No.
Is this the same stormwater that you used for phase one?
Phase one had ponds.
It does have ponds. Okay.
Phase one did. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the cottages, the single family.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And so that has a different system because of the land configuration, I take it? And the
Correct.
fact that
Correct.
there's so little building and the amount of land that's here for this one. All right. I'll leave it to the engineer to work with them on that and make sure that there's enough sand for something to go someplace. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the major subdivision preliminary plat for Prices Creek Phase 2 townhomes.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Carroll and a second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Osprey Landing Phase 1 and 2 final plat. Thank you, Travis.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, good evening. Just want to recognize City Planner Mo Meehan one more time for taking the two more difficult ones tonight. We'll call that reason or item number 4001 on the list of reasons why I owe her a lot. So before you tonight is a major subdivision final plat for phases 1 and 2 of Osprey Landing. Osprey Landing is located to the north of Robert Ruark, west of Howe Street, shown in that big purple area right there. The Osprey Landing was approved as a planned unit development with a development agreement in May of 2020. Wow, that feels like a lifetime ago. And then the preliminary plat for the entire 196 unit subdivision was approved by this board in June of 2021. The roadways within the entirety of the project are private. The water and sewer is to be handled by Brunswick County. The electric system is the only system that would be handled by the city of Southport. And per Ellie, the electric infrastructure they've installed is in accordance with all applicable City of Southport standards. Back up a little bit so you can see it. Phase 1 includes the main entrance off of Robert Ruark. It includes the amenity site located to the left as you immediately drive into the subdivision. The amenity site received major site plan approval from the planning board in June of last year. And then 45 single-family lots located along 3 private roadways, includes the amenity site, as I mentioned. Phase 2 is immediately to the east of Phase 1 on the other side of the main entrance. The main differences here from Phase 1 is that you've got a number of lots, lots 99 through 117, that are alley loaded as opposed to loading directly onto the street. Cades Cove, Phase 1 of Cottages of Prices Creek, or other neighborhoods that have that alley system. Also, Lake Ridge Drive, again, fully private, includes a landscaped median through the vast majority of the cross-section, not just in this phase, but continuing into future phases. That landscape median, and I should have included this in the staff report, but based on the preliminary plat, they did show a few areas for tree retention and a few areas for tree planting. Based on the multiple site visits I've done, including my own review and then walking the site with the applicant, they've actually both been able to retain more trees than they had proposed that they were going to remove, and have planted more than they said they were going to plant, including keeping some areas, not just clearing around the tree, but actually keeping some areas completely native and not touching with any earth-moving equipment at all. One particular area would be there's the pointer, there it is, right there. This was proposed to be cleared and planted, and it is left essentially native at this point. That's interesting. Through the final plat, there are a number of conditions of approval that staff are recommending be included. These are all pretty standard conditions that would look familiar based on the other final plats that I've brought before this board. These are all to be done prior to plat recordation, including DEQ approval of the water and sewer systems, and Brunswick County Utilities signing the plat prior to us signing the plat. That's standard for any project that we ever do that involves Brunswick County Utilities. That's a given, but for the purposes of putting it on the condition, that approval should be coming down any day now. Prior to plat recordation, the applicant will provide a performance guarantee with associated financial instrument and engineer cost estimate with 25% contingency for the construction of the sidewalks in accordance with the preliminary plat. Again, you put the sidewalks under a performance guarantee in order not to have them installed and then torn up through the construction process. And then 3, prior to plat recordation, the applicant will provide certification from NCDOT that all required improvements dictated by the approved traffic impact study for the project have been installed or otherwise satisfied. And I say otherwise satisfied because one of their requirements was a financial commitment to long-term signal upgrades at the Robert Ruark 87 to 11 intersection. And with all the construction happening right there, they were not going to make the applicant make any signal changes that are just going to get removed in a few months. So that has already happened. We're just waiting on certification of the turn lane from Robert Ruark into the neighborhood, which should, per the applicant, come any day now. With those conditions, staff respectfully recommends approval. The applicant had a late-breaking conflict and could not be here tonight, but I can certainly answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Travis?
Travis, so 15 years, 5 years from now, there's not going to be an issue with these streets because when we do this vote, we're saying we have no intention of taking them over.
The engineer will certify that they are designed and constructed to the standards that they committed to at the preliminary plat, but yes, the city is not, nor will it ever be, on the hook for maintenance unless a whole separate long-term crazy process occurs.
Okay, I just want to make sure that our record keeping, that our records reflect this decision so that we don't have a problem in the future.
These will all be platted as private, and there's a private road certification that says what you've just said.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the final plat for phases 1 and 2 based on conformance with the previously approved preliminary plat and with the applicable standards of the City of Southport UDO and Osprey Landing planned unit development and associated development agreement with the following with those conditions.
Second.
A second by Mr. Lombardi and a motion by Alderman Carroll. Any further discussion on the approval of Osprey Landing?
This is another case where we really don't have a choice. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's an administrative decision, just like the preliminary plat.
Any further comments? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Unless we want to do social media again, we'll go to item 10. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Alderman Davis. Ordinance amendments to the boards, committee, and commissions, chapters 2 and 13. Randy Jones will do that, our Community Relations Director.
Are we having fun? You've got the ordinance in front of you concerning the code of ordinances that pertain to the board, commissions, and committees. We've gone through this a few times, myself and Dory, with you. The main point of this when we put this together was to put together a policy and procedures dealing with these committees, not only about their term limits, procedures on how we deal with the applicants with their interview process. It was really trying to take this ordinance in a way that we take all our committees uniform and able to make it not only easier for you as the board, but for our citizens to know how they can get involved. So I think we've taken the last couple of meetings where we've discussed this, put all the changes, and I think the document you have in front of you have covered all that. I want to say Dory's done an excellent job with putting all these different ordinances together, so wouldn't be this without her. So if you have any questions, I think we can address them.
I just have a couple of things, and I apologize for not finding this for the workshop and having the conversation. And this may be something that's simply housekeeping. In the Parks and Recreation and Beautification, the S for alderman, the mayor shall appoint an alderman with an S in parentheses was left off of those two. And then we had talked about, and she put it on forestry, but it should have also been included with Parks and Recs and Beautification. The mayor shall appoint an alderman to Parks and Recs committee to act as a liaison, who shall be entitled to the privileges except all privileges except making a motion, voting, or holding office. That language for Parks and Recreation and Beautification, she put it in forestry. So that, and then the only other thing is just an alderman thing, and I think y'all can just make
we
that.
We can do the housekeeping on this.
Yeah, that's just rote. So I'd like to make a motion with these changes that I've just made to, I didn't read the thing, to approve.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the proposed amendments to Chapter 2 and Chapter 13 of the Code of Ordinances to make all the boards, committees, and commissions follow the same procedures for appointments, term length, and expirations.
That's what I meant to say, and with these amendments.
These amendments, yes.
And I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, a motion by Mayor Pro Tem and a second by Alderman Alt. And basically what this does is coordinates all these committees and boards with term limits and that type of thing. So it really is making a cleaner process with the interviewing process, application process, sort of standardizes it for our city and our citizens.
Are you calling for discussion? I just want to say, and I hope the public recognizes how much work went into this. And it has been a long time coming. Every one of our committees did things differently, and it was very confusing. Plus, we had some committees where it seemed like everybody's terms expired at the same time. So this standardizes and eliminates all that confusion. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Dory.
Wherever you are.
Yes. So yes, thank you, Dorothy Dutton as well. So any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Randy. Good job there. Item 11, system development fee, utility rate study engineer selection. City manager.
Yes, general statutes mandates that a system development fee study be completed every 5 years, and this is the year. Utility rate study really helps to make sure our rates in that area will be responsible and ensures that we're not charging too little or too much. And I know the rate committee had recommended we do this. We went out to bid, we got one response, Withers Revenue as the engineering firm, and we would, I would recommend you hire them and get this going.
Okay, any motion on this?
I'll just do them all if y'all want.
Yeah, please. I can't do this one, so you have to do it.
I move to select Withers Ravenel to conduct the City of Southport's System Development Fee Study and Utility Rate Study and authorize the city manager to sign the contract.
Excellent. Is there a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Item I, the committee reports from our board liaisons, and I'll start with Alderman Allen. Alderman Carroll.
Historic Preservation Commission met last week. Feels like last week or 2 weeks ago. Anyway, making really good progress on guidelines, setting up the boundaries, and I hope that in the next few months we'll be seeing something for us to approve as in the way of guidelines. They are meeting twice a month now, so they are really working hard to get that moving. 4th of July had a fantastic shrimperoo and adopted artwork last month that looks fantastic. So making good progress there, and I think this will be the greatest 4th of July festival we've had. So I look forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you. Alderman Alt.
Nothing, sir.
Thank you. Reverend Alderman Lowe Davis.
Alderman Mosteller is going to talk about forestry and Parks and Rec.
Alderman Lombardi.
Beautification, I got to talk about them. They've been busy again. We stained all the benches and swings at the waterfront and cleaned and restored some of the signs. And in between, had pop-ups to do various things around the city. And the newest is that we're building tables and chairs for Taylor Field.
Oh, wonderful.
So that's what we're doing.
Excellent. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, sir. The Forestry Committee, the big news is they're reinstating the Tree Champion Award. And so be on the lookout for that. They're going to do applications on their website, and they're going to promote a whole program around that, and it'll become an annual event. So that was the big news from forestry. And then I just want to, from Planning Board, next Thursday at 6 o'clock here is the regular Planning Board meeting.
Thank you. And the ABC board met yesterday, same time as we had our meeting here. So they had a good meeting, and things are going well there. Next will be our manager's report.
Yes, very quickly, the city is borrowing a great idea from the fire department, and Cheyenne's been working on this. So we are going to, in the next month or two, start having a survey that the public will get in each of the departments or handed out to them on how are we doing, and it'll be a QR code type of thing. So Cheyenne's working individually with each department so that the questions are unique to each department. So if you ever see one of these, please pick them up. We can't improve things or make it better if you don't help us out as to what the issues are. You have your new monthly CIP report in front of you, our projects list. So that hopefully that'll give you an idea of where we are with each of our major capital projects. And the Hurricane Symposium is May 22nd at 5 p.m. It tends to be a sellout, so get there quick. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent report. And I also want to encourage everyone to come to our Hurricane Expo on May 22nd right here, 5 p.m. Also, I want to remind everyone Memorial Day, May 29th. Alderman Davis will tell us about one of these ceremonies, but we'll also be having a flag lowering ceremony Monday, May 29th at 7:30 p.m. At the Waterfront Park. So that will be part of our Memorial Day service. Also, we want to congratulate all the graduates for their accomplishment and their family and their parents. So remember a graduate. Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day to all. We remember and cherish our mothers, those that are not with us, and those who are fortunate enough to have your mother, make sure you contact them. And remember those who are like a maternal figure in your life. And so anyway, thank you for that, and thank you for this meeting. Staff reports are in your packet, and we'll go to board comments. Alderman Allen.
Thank you. Just real quick, on May 23rd, the Brunswick Partnership for Housing is having a fundraising event at American Fish with the Salty Dogs playing, and there's food. I think it's from 6 to 8. I just encourage everybody to support that wonderful organization and what they're doing in our community. Thank you.
Alderman Carroll.
Where is it?
American Fish, May 23rd at 6 p.m. You can get tickets. So you can go, I think, online to the Brunswick Partnership for Housing's website and purchase tickets.
Alderman Carroll. Alderman Alt.
I just want to, excuse me, I want to thank the city manager for following up with Habitat for Humanity and moving forward with that conversation.
Thank you. Alderman Lowe Davis.
Okay. Memorial Day. John N. Smith Cemetery Foundation and the American Legion Bellamy Post 213 are sponsoring and holding the 2023 Memorial Day Parade. It starts, obviously, Monday, May the 29th. Parade will form up starting at 10 o'clock at the Longshoremen's Hall on 10th Avenue. And the parade will actually start at 10:30. Bicyclists, golf carts, walkers, the fire department will provide the color guard and the antique truck. Is that correct? Outstanding. And the route will be from 10th Street out to Howe, up Howe, turning down Leonard, and proceeding to the cemetery, which is in the very next block. We have a dynamic guest speaker, the Reverend William McDowell. He is an AME Zion preacher, a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, and a veteran. Being a graduate of West Point, he served in the U.S. Army and attained the rank of captain. He is also a city planner for the city of Wilmington.
Alderman Lombardi. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, we did this last year. I just want to recognize Kate Marshall, our animal welfare officer. She got a grant from Petco Love and Bissell Pet Foundation for vaccinations and chips. And so she held another event this past Saturday that I got to participate and volunteer. I want to also single out Dr. Allie Travis and her amazing crew at River Road Animal Hospital. They volunteered their time, their facilities, amazing. And again, that was Dr. Travis at River Road Animal Hospital. And just for some fun facts, in the morning, we averaged 30 pets an hour for rabies and or chips. There was a total of 125 vaccinations, 38 microchips. So it was a great event and just great community.
That was all at no cost to the owners, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, excellent meeting, board. Thank you for proclaiming the nurses and our police and our military and getting ready for hurricane preparedness this week. And thank you for all the hard work, city staff, what you've done to get this meeting together. And board, thank you for your hard work, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mayor Pro Tem, second by Alderman Carroll. All in favor? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.